have it. Let me have it. Let me have it.
Don't sit on the table right this minute. Talk to Mama. You started all this, Mama.
And then she.
Mama, you started all this.
Louis.
You started all
Oh, they're
this.
buying a house. This darn things they are.
Don, how old are you today?
I'm 70.
How's it feel?
7-0.
How does it feel?
Great.
Yeah, we're getting your
Oh my
talking.
goodness. I really think I need some lipstick.
And here's my new film, but how long?
Hi, Marlis.
Hi, Charlotte. Isn't this great?
Yeah.
We're gonna have a good time. That's the new. Put on
You?
the new film, but I gotta get the old out.
Well, how you get it out?
I don't know.
Say something, y'all.
That's for the experts. They can her hands.
When it comes to
it's
she hadn't called on me yet.
Oh, she
Said call on you.
Probably won't put.
She
looks like most.
Okay, Charles, you're on.
All right, man, what a pretty day.
Hey,
My
Carol.
cousin.
Yes, aren't we proud of him? I'm going to zoom in on him. Hold him back up. Robert Cash
The
and
best
Eve.
picture?
Yes.
Well, you
There's
read
that
about
Alvin.
cousins.
Hello, hello. I don't climb mountains. I don't do anything.
You don't.
You hadn't found your talent yet?
I haven't found my talent
You
yet.
have a pretty talent.
I'm Dot East's nephew
By marriage, though.
by marriage.
That
Makes it
in-law,
lonely.
that outlaw. You're an outlaw.
Yes, I'm married to Carol.
Lewis, what are you going to tell us?
Ma'am,
How old are you today?
I'm not still.
You're married to the honoree.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Glory will be reflected.
Hey, Chloe.
What?
Hi.
I'm the one that takes the dot down a
Dot.
notch, because I'm 72. I can take her down two
2
years
years
worth of
notches.
notches.
Okay, y'all look over here. I've got you on.
Mother, we'll look over there in the picture, then we'll put it back on.
Wait a minute. Let's put Mother's face toward the camera.
Well, Mother,
Can y'all say something smart?
They want you to do your thing now.
she said say
She's
something
the youngest
smart.
of all.
Well, I feel the youngest, but I'm
But
sure
I'm the
not.
most intelligent and the prettiest.
So what are you, Marlis?
Youngest.
She really is.
The baby.
The
She's
baby.
the baby.
The love child.
I'm the baby. But Mama loves us all.
I was the only one playing.
Who said that?
I was a pure accident off the honeymoon. I really was.
You were?
think they're all.
I'm going to zoom in.
To look alike. All right.
You look real good.
Let's do our profile. See if we really look alike.
Okay.
Well, I've done that many a time.
Bye. Good to see you. Well, mine get weaker every day.
Hi. I'm getting y'all on the camera.
You gotta sit up.
Uh-huh. Okay, you're on.
Happy birthday, Dot Dot. Here, look at the camera. Happy birthday, Dot Dot. Oh, this will be great. Here she comes. I see her coming. There's Dot Dot.
Hey there.
Hi, Elizabeth. Cute.
Thank you. Thank you. Pink shoes.
Elizabeth.
Say hi.
love your bow.
No picture.
Hey, Bob.
Hi, Charlotte. Hi, Dot Dot. Happy birthday.
Hey, Dot. I love your dress.
You do?
So
Pink
pretty.
hose and all?
Yes.
Right earrings, right thing, right length?
Right
look all
leg?
right?
Yeah, she
Listen,
looks
Charlotte,
wonderful.
Laura, come on.
Yes,
Laura,
I'll do them all
we
day long.
We need some blue in here, don't we, darling? Look at Charlotte.
Can you give Dot Dot a kiss for her birthday?
Come
Look at the
here,
picture.
Cash. Quick. I bet he'll give me a kiss. Come around this side. Give me a kiss.
Aw.
Come on, we're on. We're coming to the party. Don't act like that you're nervous, because you're not nervous.
Okay, now y'all just stand there a minute. Hey, Lewis, I like your tie.
Thank you. That's Dot's choice.
Look at it.
It's wonderful to have a party here.
Good.
Join the party.
Did you just get here? Yes, I do. Hey, Matt. Hey, Carol.
Hi there.
Hey, Collier and Cash.
Say happy birthday to Dot there.
Mama. You.
Good to see you again. You got red shirt. Did Charles?
Hey, Tom.
Hi.
Be good. Yeah.
We're having a good time. Are we supposed to act like we're conversing singing
Yeah.
and being very natural?
You want to? Hi, Paul. I can't see you.
Get my name tag now so they'll know who I am. So they'll know who you are.
Daughter.
Here I am.
They're movies.
Y'all want to wave or anything? This is Aunt Faye's daughter, right? Tell me about Mama and basketball.
Tell you about it?
About the
Well, I
basketball.
don't know too much about it. I just saw a picture with them.
And they really play.
They had their basketballs, they had on their outfits, their basketball uniforms. It was the bloomer type thing. I guess they're
All right, gotcha. We're so glad y'all could come. Y'all want to wave at the camera? Want to wave?
This is her daughter-in-law's mother. I think this is real.
Dot, are you drinking champagne?
Champagne punch.
Let me see a
It's got a
toast.
punch in it.
Elizabeth,
Come here, Liz. Come
scoot in.
Do you want the picture?
This is a picture for the newspaper.
We're going to Oklahoma City.
Together.
We may never come back. I'm coming back. No, she's not.
This is fun.
Good. Oh, you're fine. Scotty. Hi, Clyde. I got you on film. Leslie. Hi. Dad, I'm getting y'all on the film.
Got some. Philip got a postcard. Said he had a yak burger.
Oh, really?
Sing pizza.
I've already been taken.
Hi.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Do you love them?
That's probably covered in
Still one.
no way. That's second.
Well, look, Lucy, I'd rather get next to people, and they have to come over here and speak to me anyway, so. Call your name and get, oh, you're ready for your cake, and I'm like, well, that's not right. Lucille's trying to help me, you know. You look like a photographer. Shirley, you just like what I'm wearing today, don't you?
I do. Hey, Leslie. Jim.
Again, I am the casual cousin, as you can see. I've come in late to fill out the leaving crowd. That's really all I have to say.
Hey, Dot.
Hi.
Hi.
Sure has been fun.
Which drink are you on?
The first bourbon. Y'all just. I think I'm gonna turn my back to you.
You look back to normal. You look back to normal.
Cynthia.
Smile for me, Lewis.
Hey, Laura, let me have my photographer. Good. Hey, Chloe.
Got a good shot at it.
Diane.
We need to take your picture.
The red light is on.
It's not running. Just act normal.
There it is.
Don't you want to say something like 6%?
Oh, wow, cats.
How many is this for you? I'm so glad somebody's taking your picture.
I know it.
Dot, you're getting kind of loud.
It's okay.
Hurts out.
Y'all, we need to pull these tables.
It's number 17.
Let's pull the tables.
19.
We gotta make John's got.
How about Cuddy
John's
moving right along? Oh, we got some more.
Did you know her?
How many times and then do it all again? You'll do better the second time around.
Yeah, we'll do better.
Excuse me.
Silk one up.
Mr. Wayne, you know
Mr. Wayne.
I got the last plan. Now Richard is actually taking the picture. The reason he's not in it.
It's happy birthday to
Now, when you stop, they want your picture.
How old Richard? How old?
I ordered this for today.
Wait, you're ready.
That's
How old are
okay.
you? Are you telling?
50.
He's a
Yours
happy.
today? Yours is a big.
Well-
I want you to go get your kid.
Well, now that we have just sort of a family group, and I know it was sort of big in that room, but we want a speech from Dot, and then one from Richard. We sang to you in there, but I know it was sort of, now that you can really be on camera and record it,
Oh dear.
we want something intimate.
Something intimate and
What is that?
And a clever birthday, you have to go around the table.
run around the table.
And do what?
Say something nice.
Well,
I thought it was sweet. We bet it can.
Do you chow chow?
Can with the cat.
my Tai Chi, not my Chow Chow, my Tai Chi.
Do you chow chow?
Have another drink, Dot.
I can do it.
Chug lug.
Well, Don, tell us something that stands out in the last 70 years. There's bound to be
Well, I was
something.
going to, but nobody would give me a chance.
Well, I'm interested. I want to know.
Nobody would let me talk.
Excuse
We've
me.
never known that to stop you before.
Y'all are talking too much. This is a
Who's
talk.
this nobody you're talking about?
Dot, stand up and then everybody
Stand
will
up.
be quiet. Look how bashful she is.
Chloe, it's her birthday.
Thank you, Alvin. That's what I need.
Always been like
She's
that.
always
Please give her a chance.
squelched. But anyway, I'm not gonna be squelched. This has been a wonderful day, and I can't thank y'all enough. I'm not gonna cry. But no, I'm not. But anyway, it's been wonderful, and I thank y'all. And y'all just don't know, I'm so proud of my family, and I'm proud of all my friends, and I wanted my family and my friends to know each other.
Why?
Diane,
I'm sorry.
she's being
I'm my
serious.
mother's daughter.
Yeah, y'all let me get through. I had some things to say. But anyway, no, y'all, it's just been wonderful. And There's only one other birthday that I remember in my whole 70 years. And I told it to Mama last night, but I'll tell it to y'all, and that was my 16th birthday. My mother made homemade chicken hot tamales. And y'all ever had it? I still can taste them. And she had a surprise dinner party. I didn't know about it. It really was a surprise.
Well, this was supposed to be.
But wasn't it more fun because I got to have more people? Y'all are just going to have 70 and I made 160.
We did.
But anyway,
That way we start off with.
I know it. And so 16. I just remember the 16th. And so we had a dinner party. I don't know, Chloe, I guess you and Rebecca were there. Do you remember it?
Well, sure we were there.
I mean, do you remember that? Do you remember my 16th?
I do remember some chicken hot tamales.
And she probably never made it since, but it was a surprise, and it was a complete surprise, and it was just more fun. And then after dinner, the boys came over and we danced. That's what we used to do, Medford. Remember, we'd come to our houses. What did we play for music? What did we have for music?
Yeah, Big Troll.
Victrolas.
And you wound it.
Laura, you believe in this?
And so we danced, and so that 16 was just wonderful. Well, my Uncle Med sent me a birthday card that he made, and he had a lot of different things on it this week, and he said, I don't know why he said this, but he said 15 going on 16 is wonderful, but 70 going on 80 is better. So here's to my 70 going on 80. I'm not very
She's not here.
We'll be in here at dinner if you need.
Well, let me rest a minute. I have to think what else. It's just a birthday in a lifetime. Oh, I know what else I was going to say. One thing. That this is just wonderful. It's just a once in a lifetime thing, and it'll never be topped unless Louis and I make it for 5 more years, and then y'all have to give us a golden wedding.
Well, if you do,
Y'all are thinking about a trial separation?
if you do, Dot, will you let Lewis talk then?
Yeah, but this isn't his birthday.
I know, but,
Oh, I know
but he
what else.
hasn't gotten to talk in the last how many years?
I know, but then, honey, you make it for 5 more years with me, and you can talk. Here, but I love
Do
it.
I have to make it and talk? I'd rather just make it.
You knew there'd be a catch to it.
I think I remember what else.
What else?
She's like an evangelist.
You're just jealous.
Well, you know, to live 70 years, you'd think that you'd have some accomplishments. And I really look around, and I haven't built a bridge, and I haven't written a symphony, and I haven't composed a poem, and I really haven't done anything.
Well, look at
except-
your 2 boys.
I
Look
sung
at them. Look at them.
but
When's something good gonna happen?
with Lewis's
Wait, she got a
help,
punchline.
Kate beat me to it. With Lewis's help, I grew 2 sons who grew up married. Who married 2 lovely and talented wives, and who produced 4 extraordinary grandchildren. And so to my accomplishments.
You're a compliment, Dot.
How good we
What
all
you
are.
lose in your will? What'd you leave out?
I like to hear that.
That's all I have to say. I laid awake last night and thought, and I think that was it.
Well, I would like to make a,
I didn't write it.
You'll be like, I went out to Rebecca Walters, what was it, 50th wedding anniversary, something like that last year. And it was out in the garden, dinner served out in the garden on bridge tables, and about 50 people were there, and they got up and they told all these glowing things they thought about Rebecca and Walter. And I didn't know anybody, and you can't believe it, but I felt like a mouse, you know. I didn't know anybody, so I was too timid. I was real timid.
Everybody breathe this down.
I did.
We went to bed, Rebecca said, when we were little, we were best friends. She said, Chloe, you didn't say a darn thing.
Alvin, why don't you make a toast?
yeah, I was gonna say that I would like to make a toast to my favorite aunt, but I can't. So I would make a toast to to one of my favorites.
I share the spotlight.
That's right. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, E.T. Happy birthday to you.
There must have been some.
Speech!
Come on, Richard, you can't get out of
I
it.
got a card that says you got many more beers to go.
Who sent that?
Marla.
Okay, Richard, Dot, and E.T. have gave us a word of wisdom now.
Right there.
We want something from you.
Now, Richard doesn't know anything wise.
Nothing long.
He might say something funny.
All right.
Well, I think what I'd
Clo,
like to do
Clo.
I'd like to recount each of my birthdays as they've taken place over the years, beginning with my very first birthday.
I believe it.
If you could, I'd stay.
But to spare you that actually, I just say I've had a hell of a good time up to this time, and I'm going to try and have a hell of a good time until I go. And I've enjoyed being a member of this family. For
He's finally admitted it.
There are some exceptions, however.
Richard, is there anything you wanted to say about your mother-in-law at this time?
Only that I think she's a darling lady, and we just get along wonderful. That's just how I feel about that.
We do.
Well, we do.
We do.
We do.
Richard
And me and John Hall have lunch about once a week, and I just
And we just talk about the women in the family,
And how lucky you all are.
and our problems with them.
You mean it's bred into Diane? She's gonna be like her mama.
Hopefully.
Well, Diane, what do you have to say?
I'm not old enough to talk.
As much anyway.
so everybody can see what I get.
That's right. Now, y'all, he gave you some flowers.
They were pretty
They were
too.
beautiful, and I'm going to take them home. Louis.
Don't forget them tonight. Louis! Louis!
Look at me.
Now, this is the nicest birthday card I've received so far. That's the truth.
What does it say?
Well, it's a nice card. She said, "Happy birthday. You'll get all the attention when you're 70." I'll probably be here to a minute. And I hope you are.
What's that, 21
Well-
years?
20
With your mother's
20 years
genes, you
apart.
probably will be.
Well, sure.
Where's my sister Marla?
We'll be
She
rolling
took-
you
Your
through
mother
your
met
I
her.
know, but that's so long ago.
Well, they said they just thought they knew their way back.
We'll all be playing geriatric basketball together.
Box of candy. I thought you'd pass it around.
Spoil our dinner.
I can't wait for a piece.
I normally would, but
You can't suggest.
Oh, I thought it really was.
all right. Look at here. Hey, that's nice.
Oh, you got a nice gift.
Oh my goodness.
Thanks, everybody's
Like Albert.
That's what started it. That tie's what started
Let's
it.
see it.
It's a pretty time.
I went and bought Louis one and you one.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Now listen,
Hold up
Richard,
to ET.
are you against wearing pink?
Yeah, look at that. Yeah, all right.
Are you against wearing pink?
No, I've got a pink shirt on with it.
Okay, okay.
And I've got a pink silk suit with little pink.
Little pointed slippers. Some pointed boots.
You know those knee-high pink, where they highs they got? Where they those? And then yeah, we're here. You want here? And get my hair flowed, you know?
I've heard that earring doesn't mean a thing.
Yeah, well, I've never talked to it, so I don't know what it means.
You got an earring?
Just one.
Which is in his right ear.
I don't need an earring to be weird.
He's not as strange as I told you he was.
Oh, do y'all know why a straw hat and kissing over the telephone are alike?
I'll buy it.
Had a yak burger. And a what else, Bobby? A yak pizza. Yak pizza and a yak burger.
I didn't see a lady with
Can't wait to go.
There was
taking
Let's go, Richard. Why don't we go with it? You and me. We'll do, I tell you what we'll do the news items. Huh? We can do that.
Okay.
That's what we have in this book. That's right.
About what, Carol? What do you
We
say?
climbed the lunch mountain.
Yeah, y'all have to. Y'all have to miss the mountain.
Would you like to have lunch there sometime?
Our office environment. I want to tell you just one little thing, and I got her a present that I hope will help her out on that. All of you get these little pink slips that have messages on them and say, call so-and-so and leave a number. Well, my mother, you know, she's a very efficient secretary, and sometimes I have my door closed in my office, and I have a piece of glass next to the door, and I'll be talking on the phone, cutting, of course, some multi-million-dollar deal. And I get a phone call, and Mother will walk up to the door, and she won't know whether to open it or not. So she'll stand at the glass, and she'll take this little pink slip and hold it up to the glass. And I turn around in my chair and try to ignore her. She gets her toes against the glass and just stands there. So I finally get so mad, I scream at her and slam the phone down and go out and jerk the message out of her hand. So I got her a pink slip that I can read.
Oh, I love it.
Like, hold it up.
I love it. Oh, that is wonderful.
At least you can read it now. Still be mad, but at least you can read it.
Right.
Also, of course, you know, in a family-owned business, if you leave for 2 months, you can't leave anybody but family in charge. You know? So, of course, I'll leave my mother in charge of my business. And she's going to need something to show everybody there that she is the boss. So I got her a little thing that I'll help her
Well,
out.
I'm so glad because they don't think I am.
Nobody thinks she is.
I didn't know I was either. Right now.
Oh, my.
Good. I'm so tickled. I get to
You're
be
gonna end up eating your tape up there, you think?
It's some kind of hand on there.
Hard hand.
Oh, I love it.
Put it on, Dot.
All right.
And of course, you're going to have to smoke a cigar after.
And so,
Now get that on camera.
I'm so glad. I don't want to say I'm overwhelmed. Bobby, thank you. I don't know when you had time to think up all this.
Miss went skiing, but forgot a lot. Appointments left waiting while she's home contemplating her family, her work, and dear Pop. Happy birthday. You have to open them in order.
Open them in order. Okay. I might forget.
No, it's numerical order. So 1, 2, 3.
See, I told you I had some good accomplishments. That is so cute. Well, I'm just so lucky to have such a wonderful family.
Let the camera on a minute and
Oh,
take
it's
a drink.
can't, oh yeah. I'd like to save this paper.
This will be on 6 o'clock.
Can I save it?
worry about his recommendations.
One time at Christmas, I was
Your reputation's already so bad in the family, it's all.
Looks like lingerie.
Oh, something more than that.
Find one.
Find
Oh,
one.
one.
There it is.
We cannot see down here.
Okay, I'm over there, I can't find one.
That you just had?
One, to help the failing mind. I'm terminally disorganized. Oh, how cute. Notepad, okay. Two.
You probably lose that pad.
2, attached to purse, keys, and wrist. Blow whistle if you're lost. Isn't that? I really will put all my keys now on that. I need this to help you see better, my dear.
I think she realizes she's really not.
Get light up a little bit, dog.
Cash and Collier have good reading material when they go to Dot's house. But Elizabeth and Jessica don't have reading material, so now it's equal.
You almost have to explain.
Oh, I think everybody's heard it. We don't have to go. Oh. Or Jessica.
Nice clean car.
I'm gonna get Richard's car.
Okay,
No,
we're on camera now, and this is April 1987, and Cynthia is just back from China, and she's going to tell us about her trip. And we'll ask questions
Okay.
or whatever.
So,
So welcome home. When did
Thank
you get
you,
home,
thank
and what
you.
did it feel like? And
well, I'm sort of nervous already starting off knowing that camera's there. I've never been more happy to be home or be in any one place in my life because it was so different and so hard and so, I mean, the trip itself was just exhausting. The food was terrible, the accommodations were terrible, the wind was fierce, there was, you know, we were always cold or tired or hungry. We were being pushed around by the Chinese CMA, which is the Chinese Mountaineering Association. And they were the ones that had us on a certain schedule, and you had to do what they said, when they said to do it. And so, you know, I was really exhausted when I got back. But on the other hand, it was the neatest thing I've ever done too, just because it was such a completely different, totally, I mean, I just felt like someone had taken a clock and spun it back. That was the best way I could think to describe it. And then we stepped off. And mainly our trip was Tibet rather than China, even though China is, you know, has taken in Tibet. And Tibet's real high, like 12,000 feet. And like those of you who've been skiing, you know that you can't breathe very well at 10,000 feet. So Tibet starts at 12,000 feet and goes up. And I think the way they've been able to maintain their culture is because it's so separate. I mean, it's so isolated and so high. But it was just the most amazing place to see. The people, the women were all dressed in or the men too, dressed in the native sort of a black dress sort of thing. And then they put an apron over you, and then they put I put an apron with all these stripe things, and they take these sashes, they tie the sash around their waist, and they tie it around their shoulder, and then they'd come up with it in their head, and they'd wrap it all around their head, and then they'd braid it into their hair, and then they'd have a million different earrings and beads and jewelry. And they were real dark-skinned, but in these bright, red, rosy cheeks. I mean, they looked like they'd taken their rouge or makeup or, you know, blush on and just caked it on, just painted on. And they were real happy.
Was that natural?
Yeah.
Or makeup?
Yeah, no, it was natural. It was totally a characteristic, a physical characteristic. And they were so happy. All these Chinese people, they're devout, I mean, Tibetan, big difference, Tibetan. Devoutly religious. And that's all they did was all this praying business. But then at the same time, they were real lighthearted and laughing. And they'd come up and they'd touch you and they'd look at your bracelet and they'd turn around like this and they'd, you know, they'd look at this. And if you'd show some sort of reserve, like what are you doing? They'd just laugh. They go, hello. And then they'd have all this jewelry on, you know, and they'd come up and they'd say, how much? You say, how much? And I'd say, I don't know. You say, how much? You say, how much, you know. But
They're trying to sell you their jewelry?
yeah. And then they carry, you know, they have everything. They're basically, the Tibetan people are basically nomadic. So they're carried all their stuff in here, and this, you know, they come out with the most amazing things from under their skirts. You know, how much this? And you're doing right. How much this? How much? It was just, I love the Tibetan people. And they were so different from the Chinese people that, and I liked them so much better. They were so much nicer, and the Chinese people were real pushy, and they spit everywhere, and they were not ever very friendly to us. And
Don't they lead a very harsh life?
Yes,
though?
and I think that's why. And like Beijing was so crowded and so drab, and so the city itself was ugly, and but the Tibetan people were, the Chinese people were just real bureaucratic. And then this group that we were with, this governmental agency, just had hold of us, and we couldn't make a move without them saying what we were going to do. And it just got finally where it kind of wear on you. And I was telling Tommy them earlier that any kind of decision that had to be made, well, all of a sudden these people would just appear out of the woodwork, all these different Chinese. And, well, like for example, we finally got to our hotel, got checked in Chengdu, and this is the night before we're getting ready to leave. And we went up to the restaurant, and we had, they put the food, and you kind of poke at it with your chopsticks, and you go back to the room and eat some Vienna sausages that we'd taken.
You mean you couldn't identify the food?
Oh, and you couldn't identify it, number one, you sure weren't going to eat it. It was terrible. It was terrible. So,
Sounds like a Holiday Inn.
yeah, it was terrible. So we were sitting there, but they did always have beer. So they always put a beer on the table for us, and that was one, we always would drink that beer, At least we had something for beer. But then they had, we were sitting in this restaurant, and there was sort of like a bar. They had it kind of set up, and there was a bottle of scotch. And I said, God, there's some scotch with the scotch and water. And I said, well, okay, go order some scotch and water. So our little interpreter, who never left our side, Bobby and the interpreter walk up, and there's this real nice Chinese woman who said hello when we walked in and everything. And I could barely hear Bobby, and he said, we need 2 scotch and waters. And so she kind of looked at Bobby, and then she started with the interpreter, and he was, blah, blah. And then here comes the other guy, blah, blah. And then here come 2 more, blah, blah. And so by the time they're through, or no, they hadn't even gotten through, there were about 7 Chinese people, our interpreter and Bobby, and the bottle of scotch was right there. And I can't imagine what the problem was. And Bobby would say, okay, wait a minute. He'd talk to our interpreter, say, what's wrong? And he was just, and again, this is this 22-year-old kid who'd never been in a hotel or an airplane or anything, and he didn't know how to order scotch. Anyway, the point being that everything was a major deal. So by the time they finally got the scotch and water, I bet it took 15 minutes. It doesn't say the scotch was right there. They came back, and in the meantime, 2 people had come and taken their chairs. I mean, I was sitting at the table, and I didn't even see them do it. Somebody just came and took both of their chairs.
Hi, it's ready.
So, I mean, that's the sort of thing that you just...
Ready.
And another thing, we got to Chengdu that night, and this Chinese Mountaineering Association is the one telling us everything to do. We got there, and the guy said, you don't need your bags. We come in here at 7 o'clock in the morning. You just leave your bags here. And we said, well, we need your bags. No, you're not going to take a bag. Just leave your bags. So in other words, we weren't even going to be able to get our toothbrush. Well, that's one time that we finally just really got pushy and went over there and said, we are taking our bags. And then these guys were mad at us, the rest of the time. They didn't want us to take our bags to the hotel for the night. No night.
They want to control the whole situation. They want.
So they wanted to check out what was in your bag?
No, I don't think that. They just very bureaucratic, and the hotel room would get screwed up, and then everybody, the manager would come, and then the owner of the hotel, and then
Isn't there something about, just what little I know about Chinese people, isn't there something about everybody has to have a job there in order to get fed?
Exactly. I mean, that's what we said. That's what we thought, that everyone, yeah.
I've heard that. That everybody has to have a purpose in life, or you don't get to eat.
Right. I'm sure that's part of it, but I don't know why all those people had to get in on every little decision that needed to be made for us.
To prove their worth somehow.
And, well, there's a real pecking order for one thing, and there's a real big deal about saving face.
Yeah.
So that, in the minute, it's funny because everybody get going, and then a new person would come, and you could see everyone sort of settle down because this other person had a little bit more power. And maybe this was the head bellman rather than, and then maybe the assistant manager of the hotel would come.
And you say they're real loud.
Oh, they're real loud. Just talk like this all the time. They're pushing, push. And I was telling Mary Carolyn that, I'm fairly tall, and when you're being pushed, it's okay if you kind of match up with them, you're used to that. But they hit me about right here, and they push, and But that was the Chinese people, and I was only there for a very short time. And then when we got into Tibet, those people would rush you, and they'd crowd you. As I say, they'd pick at you and look at you, and they do all this. But the minute you really started to show you didn't like it, they'd step back and they'd laugh and smile, and they'd say something to each other, and they'd go, hello, hello, hello. And, you could just show them any little something, and they just loved it. They were just a really loving, beautiful, interesting people. And when we first got there, we flew into Lhasa, and it was, Lhasa is like the capital of Tibet and the Forbidden City and the Holy City, and it's at 12,000 feet. And we got off the airplane at Tibet and then got in the car and drove about an hour into town. Then that's when we first started having our altitude problem. And you got out of the car, and it felt kind of like you've been staring at the sun on a real bright day, and then you go into a dark room and you kind of see spots, and and my fingers were tingly, and then I had a headache. So we kind of just took a nap that afternoon, and we were better. And then the next day you're a little bit better, and then the next day you're much better, and then the next day you take off again. And we drove across Tibet from Lhasa, 6 days overland actually, to base camp in this Jeep with our little interpreter and our little
Took
Tibetan.
6 days to get to base
Well,
camp?
it's 2 nights we just stayed over day because we were getting a little bit higher. But Tibet is real, it's real flat, and then it's got these hills right behind it and just kind of a plateau sort of like. And the bluest of blue sky, I mean, it's about like Diane's dress. I mean, it is the bluest sky you've
Well, the
ever
higher
seen.
you get, that's what it does.
Right, but I've never seen anything like
Brighter
it.
and darker.
Sky.
But no green, no grass, and just real stark and real harsh and real severe.
What grows?
Nothing.
No trees? Just
There were
rocks
some
and-
sticks kind of that looked like a tree in our very dead of winter that, you know, you think, well, maybe they're going to have leaves, but
Well, they farm.
They grow barley, don't they?
They grow, yeah, they grow wheats and stuff like that, but there's not anything. And they said when the crops start coming up, there is some green. But it was neat because we were in this Jeep, and I mean, then we were going up through these mountain passes, starting to move up and starting to get closer to Everest. And we were thin, little narrow roads, just little switchback roads, you know, and hairpin turns and all that. And just that dramatic down in these mountains and everything. Well, we found out that our little interpreter loved American. At one point, he looked at me and said, "You like rock and roll?" You like rock and roll? Yeah. So I had a Billy Ocean tape with me. And so we put Billy Ocean in the tape player in the car. And so we were going through these fabulous passes with Billy Ocean just blaring. It was great. And then when we got to where we see Everest and see the mountain, and then we put some Vivaldi in and got a little more sophisticated, you know. But it was
And
great.
did you say you stopped and had a picnic lunch?
Yeah, you'd stop and eat in the hotel.
What did you eat?
Oh, you know, the hotel would pack you a lunch. And oh, this is going to be good. I mean, because you couldn't eat, I don't know what it would be. It would just be, you know, these steamed bread things that weren't cooked, and it was just dough that sort of looked like it been set out, you know, and it was just, the food was just totally inedible.
But you had to eat something, so you ate.
Well, so we took all that food with us, and you know, we'd look in our box, and we didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings or the Chinese interpreter anyway, so we'd kind of poke at it and look at it and maybe take a bite, and then.
Did he eat it?
Bobby, no, we didn't.
The Chinese?
Oh, the Chinese, yeah, they gobbled it up.
What did you take besides being a sausage?
We took some beef jerky, and we took a lot of cup of soup thing, and like these hotels now, after we left Lhasa, you had a bathroom and everything, but after we left Lhasa, then that was it on bathrooms, or, well, let's see, Shigatse had a little sink in the room, but it was only cold water. But they give you these great big thermoses of hot water. And it's mainly, the thermos is for tea, but of course we used it, the hot water, to try to take a little spit bath, you know.
Diane has asked to go with you next time.
Yeah, she would like.
She loved that.
Well, you know, when we first got to Shigatse, and I thought, oh great, this is, you know, this little bath, and this is going to be great, I'm going to really do fine on this and everything. Well then, by the time, you know, you left base camp, and I had not had a bath in like 13 days. And you know what your hair's like 2 days in it when you haven't washed it. It was just amazing.
Didn't you get acclimated to that to some extent, though? I mean,
Yeah. Well, finally, by the time you got to base camp, you were just thinking about, well, when that wind started blowing, you were just thinking about surviving that wind, and you're thinking about getting from the tent that we slept in to the food tent. And then, like, you know, you had to really want to go to the bathroom before you decided you wanted to step out and go to the bathroom because the wind was blowing.
And that wasn't
so
in the
hard.
tent.
Drink anything, so I wouldn't have to go.
But you know, that's it. That's exactly what you have. Altitude, this altitude business will really take away your dehydration. I mean, your water. So you have to drink like triple your. You're supposed to drink 2 big quarts of water a day at 17,000, and then it goes. The higher you get, the more you have to drink. So you're just, you know. And it's
Now, where do you get the water?
Well, you get the water either out of this little glacier stream that was right beside our tent, but then when it snowed, it iced over, so then we had to melt snow. And that takes forever.
Yeah.
What does it taste like? Doesn't taste like water. Our water doesn't.
No, I don't. It just tastes. I don't know. We put iodine tablets in it too to help purify it. Because a lot of times, you know, water boils at so much lower temperature, but it's not as hot. In other words, it's boiling, but it's not as hot. So it's not really killing the germs as well.
Were you and Ann the only women at base camp?
Well, and when Bobby and I and my interpreter and Jeep driver got there, everybody else had gone on up the mountain to advance base camp. So we were pretty disappointed.
Yeah.
But Ann and Jack came down to see us one day. And so I saw them, but then after that, yeah, then they went back up. But let me tell you about Shigar. That was the place that Shigatse was, pretty bad, no running water or anything. Well, then Shigar, you get there and everything is real.
Where is Shigar now relative to these other places?
Shigar's another day's. Like Shigatse was one
Further
day
up the
over the
mountain,
mountain. Not up, but just closer. We're traveling all the way
Shigar's
across.
is north, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everest, the base,
Yeah.
the base of Everest.
Shigar is the last little village before Everest, and it's about a 4-hour Jeep drive, I guess, over real rough. I mean, the cabin roads, Doc, we said a million times, the cabin roads will just be super highways compared to this. But Shigar, we got there and we've been jumping all around, beat all. I mean, you'd be so bumpy that you'd bump your head against the car. I mean, you'd think you could prevent that, but you couldn't. It would be so bumpy. And then we get to Shigar, and we get to a new place, and the altitude would be higher, so you'd feel bad and everything. So we roll into Shigar, and here our hotel is just this. There's just a series of buildings that just look sort of like trailers, and they look like POW cells or something. You walk up these steps, and there's an open door, and it's just a room with a dirt floor. Now, we kind of turn your nose up, but there's not carpet on your hotel room. Think of it. It's dirt. So you don't want to, it's real dusty, so you don't really want to put your bags down or anything, and it was so cold. These are just these concrete buildings, and there were these 2 beds, and then these big thick quilt things, and about 5 of these big quilts stacked up. And then the bathrooms, there was like a bathroom house down the way, and what the bathroom consists of is, you always walk up several stairs, and it's like a little block house. And then there's one size of women and one size of men, and you just have to hope you get the right one. And you walk in, and then there are 2x4s, I guess, basically, lined up with a slit about that big. So you get the idea. You put 1 foot on one 2x4, or 1 foot on the other.
Oh no!
Squat. But some people didn't go to that trouble, if you understand what I mean. So that was it. I took one trip to the bathroom and said, well, I'm just going to pretend like I'm at base camp from now on and just go wherever you can find to go. Well, that Shigar was the most god-awful place. And at that point, Bobby and I said, what are we doing here? It was
fun yet?
so, and then we had to spend 2 nights there because it was higher, and we got in, and that's when I really hit my low point in my trip, and because I had hurt, and you have no appetite, and we hadn't eaten anyway, so you're feeling weak, and you just think, people wouldn't believe how
You
grim
can't eat
this
because
is.
then you have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
You can't go to the bathroom.
And then they said, okay, dinner, so you go over. It was so cold in this room, and they put this food out that just looks.
That's another building where the food
Yeah.
is.
So Cash likes to make these concoctions, these potions, and he gets all this stuff and stirs it all up, and that's about what it looked like. You think, oh, deliver me! Is this really happening?
Oh, God, that's funny.
But then we got to. Then that's when we saw Bob Allison, who was the guy on the climb who had come home, who was coming home, and we were getting ready to leave, putting our stuff in the car, we're getting ready to leave, and our interpreter comes up and says something about an American is here, and we thought he meant just another. We didn't know what he meant because we didn't understand what he said half the time anyway, so we were used to not paying any attention to him, and turned around, and there was Bob Allison that we thought was halfway up the mountain, and here he was in Shigar, a full day's drive from the mountain, and just sick as a dog, and he was really depressed and really looked terrible, and it was just such a surprise to us.
Who was he with? Just an interpreter?
He was with his interpreter. No, he didn't even have an interpreter with him. He was with one of the Jeep drivers from the Swedish team that they had loaned him, the Jeep and the Jeep driver, and so he was headed home. And so that was really.
Well, now everybody else had gone on up the mountain. Is that the idea? Already.
When we got there, they had already been there, for a couple of weeks, and they had already established what's called. Well, they were working on camp number 3 when we got there, but they were already at advanced base. So that was probably my biggest disappointment.
Did you get to meet any of the Seattle people?
One came down with a toothache. So he came down off the mountain, so that's the only one I got to meet. And then we were going to go up to advanced base on Thursday. That would have given us 4 days there, and we were feeling good by then and everything. And then that's when, late Wednesday afternoons, when this windstorm and snowstorm moved in. And it just, you talk about wind, it'll never be windy again to me. after seeing that. This wind was so strong that you just really had to think about it before you went out in it, and you had to be prepared, and you had to have everything buttoned down, and just because it was fierce. And it was just, and then we were just stuck in that tent. And that was that came up on Wednesday night, and the tent, the whole time was just going, just flapping, and it just, finally after 3 days, and you're just in that tent, you just were just like this, you just felt like your brain was doing that flapping. You know, and a couple of times Bobby just turned and went, shut up! You know? I mean, it was like torture. It was just, it never stopped, just, and then every once in a while a real big one would come, and you'd think the whole tent's gonna blow down, and if it blows down, then we're just gonna blow away with it. It was hard.
Now y'all were in the dirt floor hotel room. Now all of a sudden you're in the tent. That was a base camp?
Yes, and see, when we first got to base camp and we got there, it was a real bright, sunshiny day. It was cold, but it was like a good, cold, clear, crisp day here at home. It was beautiful, and blue sky and the big mountain. It was just great. And we were so glad to be out of that hellhole Jagar. We thought it was great. Well, then we were there for 2 days, and the next day we felt bad. So we just stayed in our tent. And you know, I thought this is kind of nice. You know, I have a slight headache and got all these books, and I got me some water sitting here. And I thought, I never get to sit around and read at home. This is great. Well, then the next day we felt better, and we were kind of starting to get organized to get ready to go up the mountain, and then that wind came. And that wind, it just, and then they had to stop everything off the mountain, and everybody else came down to advanced base. But we still didn't get to see them.
So hopefully that wind will go away. It won't stay like that the whole time.
It shouldn't. I mean, it's a storm, and it should move on through. But that's the frustrating thing about it now, is that I don't know. I left on Sunday morning, and it was still just blowing.
Now, Alex, did
crazy.
Alex come down when he knew you all?
Alex was there. He came down, and Alex is the Democrat reporter. And he came down and, you know, stayed with us the whole time, and that really saved it, at least with one person. But after about 4 days and nights in the tent with Alex, we pretty much covered everything we could cover with Alex.
That's right.
Well, did he sleep in the same tent?
No, he had another tent. But
How the angle these tents down?
they had all these big rocks piled on them, but I couldn't believe they held. I really couldn't. That wind was so strong. I was really amazed.
She said if you
Richard,
took
place that
anything
map
out,
around. Is
like
that a map?
a bag or anything, it was gone. It would just float away.
Here's the map.
Yeah,
I mean, if
you
you had anything in your hand or anything, I mean, you couldn't put anything outside or let anything go, because it would just blow you across the world, you know. And anyway, then also in advanced base camp, they had taken all of our food, and we were really looking forward to getting to base camp, because we knew that they had American food that we'd all shipped over here from here, and we had a Sherpa cook, we thought, and all that. When we got there, they'd all gone up to advanced base. So we were in this tent, and then these Chinese people were cooking in that tent too, and they'd come in and cook and leave a big mess, and then you'd be looking for a pan to boil water in or something, you'd open in these big old black mushroom things that just looked like brains or something. It was just terrible.
Yeah, well, I told Dan I want to take her over there. She's going this year, and I know she's excited.
I want to hear about the Swedes, because the article that Ann wrote was so horrible about the Swedish girl.
Well, that was just real unfortunate, and I guarantee if Ann had a chance to write again, she'd write a lot more favorably about the Swedes, because the Swedes, let me tell you about the Swedes, they had each climbing season 2 people, or maybe, I think 3 actually, I think there are 3 routes that start from this same base camp. Anyway, the Swedes had one route and we had another. And they had a $750,000 budget. Ours was $160,000. They had these huge tents. I mean, twice as big as this room, with this big, ceiling like this. You walk in and sat down, and you walk in and they hand you a cup of tea, and then you pull up the chair to the table. And our tents, you squat down, you sit on the floor, and you're sitting on the ground in the cook tent. And they had, everybody had a cup with their name on it. They had another cook tent behind that with a shelf for cooking. They had. There were 4 doctors, and they were doing a lot of medical research. So they had complete operation. They could perform almost any kind of operation, any kind of surgery. Total facilities for that.
Well, I'm glad they're there.
Yeah, and see, our doctor ratted out on us. This doctor that no one really knew very well got there, felt bad like everyone else, and didn't stick it out and went home. And so Eric, our leader, climbing leader, is furious and rumbling about lawsuit if he doesn't reimburse us for his travel expenses over there and everything. But the Swedish tent and the Swedish setup was just unbelievable. They have their own telex machine. They have their own direct telephone call, so they go in there and call home, every day. I mean, every Swede could call home every day. They had a positive, negative, and you understand this kind of stuff, Richard. They could take a photograph, put the negative in there, or put their film in. No, they had a dark room. They get the negative, send it on the machine, and it would be a positive to the Stockholm paper. They had, it was just all the comforts of home. But on top of that, they were real nice guys. And when our doctor left, they went over and said, if you need us for anything, and then I mentioned that my interpreter went on up to advanced base camp, and he went up too soon. And he, according to Eric, I don't want to sound too dramatic, but according to Eric, up the mountain, he almost died with pulmonary edema, which is when your lungs fill with fluid, because of altitude. And they rushed him. They gave him some kind of injection up there, and rushed him over to the Swedes. Got him down off the mountain, took him over to the Swedes, and they, bedded him down and gave him the medicine and brought him back to health. And then this one climber, American climber from Seattle, apparently it's his two bottom teeth and his whole jaw, his chin was real swollen and everything, and he said they're just abscessed. So he shot him up with real strong doses of penicillin. And I don't know what he's going to do. And we talked about it at length because the doctor said it's abscessed, and if you were home, you'd get a root canal. And your only other choice is going to be to go home and have that done, or we'll pull him.
That's what Bobby was faced with, the choice before he left. 2 days before he left, Dr. Dan said they were trying to decide what Bobby's pain was from. If it had been that he needed a root canal and he got there in the high altitude, it would have been bad.
Well, that's what happened to this fella. And so he was in here, and this guy's a professional mountain climber, and, it's one chance. He was only like, I think he was 30, and I sort of played the mother role. I said, now look, you are 30 years old, you are going to have plenty more chances at a shot at Everest because you're professional and everything. I don't think you ought to have your 2 front teeth pulled here and maybe never get them right again. And I don't know what he was going to do.
Now, was he a Swede?
No, he was an American, but the point was that the Swedish people had given him all the medical attention that he needed.
Oh, was he the one from Washington?
He was the one from Washington. One of the ones from Washington.
Hey, it was
now,
George.
This is another group then?
No, it was with our group, but I just had
to really?
See, there were half of our team is from Seattle, Washington.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're the ones that know what they're doing.
Well, that was a later edition,
I'm certainly glad to hear
Seattle ones.
No, they've
into the planning
they've
stage.
been before, haven't they?
Yeah.
That Seattle.
But I mean, as far as going with this group,
2 of them had.
wasn't that a?
Oh, it was a little bit into it, but like 2 years ago we knew they were going.
Well, what'd you do? Just stay with Bobby at the base camp for
Bobby-
2 days, and then he went on up?
Well, yeah, Bobby and I stayed at the base camp, and then we were going to go on up that one day when then the storm moved in, and then we didn't get to go. But we were getting kind of stir crazy even without the wind, so then we were forced to stay in the tent and go crazy, and so but then I left on a Sunday morning, and then Eric, who was at advanced base, is the leader, called back down to Bobby and said, I want you to stay and greet the trekkers. And that's the group from Arkansas that Tom McRae's leading, group of people. And Bobby was real disappointed about that because he was ready to go on up. But, whatever the leader asks you to do, you do. So he was going to stay and meet the trekkers, which come 2 days after I leave, and kind of probably get them settled and everything.
Now, what do they do?
They had some more tents for them, and I don't know what they were going to do for food. There was this big question about the Chinese Mountaineering Association, which everything had been so unorganized, and they're the ones that did all the screaming and hollering every time the slightest thing. There was no food there for those trekkers. I mean, we were scraping the bottom of the barrel when we were there toward the end. So we kept talking up to advanced bases. There are the trekkers, CMA bringing food for the trekkers. And I don't know.
They're just a tourist.
I mean, they pay, they're a
Jim
tourist.
Johnson and them went.
Fred
Just to
Poe
go.
started.
Fred Poe. And,
Okay.
From here.
and they
Yeah, I hear it. Yeah.
Just to be part
Tom McRae led it, from here, and they followed the exact same route that we did. I mean, they went to Beijing, and then they ended up at Shigar, and I mean, so many times Bobby and I said, "Oh, those trekkers!" I mean,
Don't know what they're gonna do.
they paid like $6,500 a person to be just. I mean, it was hell frozen over you. You hear that
I hear that
expression?
And you've been there.
Oh, zero. But so anyway, Bobby was going to stay, and greet the trekkers, and then go on up to advanced base, and then I don't know what.
Have you heard any more?
And I
So
won't.
there's no communication.
The only communication I'll hear is will be when the trekkers get back. So they don't get back until I think the 29th of April. So I don't know what. I won't know anything. And it's so weird to have been so involved in every little stage of this. And then especially when we got to the mountain, because even though we were at base camp, we'd have a radio check twice a day. Thank you. At 9 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock at night, it would tell us at base camp what we needed. If there was anything we needed to do at base camp, like go tell the Swedes that we needed such and such, or and plus it would tell so and so's that. Oh, and the neat thing about it was that every camp, like camps 1 and 2, base camp 1 and 2 had radios too, so you got to talk to everybody.
Everybody checked in at those
Everybody
two
checked
times
in,
a
so
day.
you could talk to people at camp 2, and you could talk to people at camp 1.
They didn't have radios when they went to Mitsugata, did they?
No.
It was George Dunn with this group.
Yes.
Geo.
Did they call him George or Geo?
Geo. But they were real encouraged when we got there, real enthusiastic and real there's Chloe, because we were way ahead of the game. They were way ahead of their schedule. They were like a week to 10 days already in advance of where they thought. So they thought they were going to be able to make a summit attempt, maybe the first part of May. Excuse me, but with the weather, I mean, I know they lost 4 days that I was there because they just had to all come down and stop.
When you and Bobby were going to try to go up and you didn't get to, would it just be like walking up a hillside? Or
Yes,
would
it would
real
be
hard?
a very hard 6-hour hike. And then, of course, what would make it hard would be having a pack on your back and then the altitude. But it would be something that, hey, Chloe.
No, thank you. Mia, you come sit up, man.
Because everyone else did it, and I could have gotten that high, but it wasn't any kind of actual mountain climbing where you'd have to use any of the gear or any of the equipment or anything. But as I say, that was the biggest disappointment to me, was that I did not get to go to advanced base camp. Because, I mean, I would have really gotten set up climbing on Mount Everest if I'd gotten to do that. Plus, the food was better. Plus, they had that Sherpa cook up there. And then one Sherpa was feeling bad, not from the altitude, but was just kind of sick, and he came down. So that at the end of our stay, the one climber with the toothache, and then the Sherpa came down, and so that really perked us up some, giving us some new people, and then plus this guy started cooking.
Yeah, tell them first about
Yeah,
the
tell them
Chinese
about
cooking.
I noticed.
Tell them about the Chinese cooking something, and y'all have to dump their mess
Oh,
and the Sherpas.
well, Chloe, I want to talk to you about the Chinese people because I really left with a pretty bad impression of them. But one thing, with all these liaison officers that the CMA makes you have with them, of course you have to pay their wages and you have to pay their per diem and you have to pay their food and you have to pay their travel time, and we don't even need them, but they have to be there. So they were using the same cook tent, and they would go into this tent, and we all had the same, dishes and everything. And they would make the biggest mess you've ever seen and cook all this weird, gross-looking food and not even clean their plates, or let alone the pots that they were in, and just leave it. And just leave the biggest mess you've ever seen. So that we'd come in with feeling bad from the headache and, from the altitude and everything, and then be faced with their mess. But then when this Sherpa came down, and he was sick, he got in there. One day we started feeling better, so we thought, well, we need a project because we've got to do something. So we decided we're going to clean up the tent. And it was worse than any kitchen. It was worse than any college guy's kitchen after a month. That's about the only thing I can think to compare it to. It was 10 times worse. Nothing had been cleaned out. Nothing, and of course, it's not like you just go turn the water on and get the water hot and squirt your joy in. For one thing, you had bar soap you were trying to clean with. And you had to boil the water, go get the snow, boil the water. The wind knocks you down when you go get the water, and you use this big pan of water about like this, and then of snow, and then it makes about that much water, and you think, God!
Back out in the snow more.
So Bobby and Alex, the Democrat photographer, and I decided we're going to clean the kitchen. Well, it took, you don't want to take your gloves off because it's so cold, but you have to. It took us all morning long, and the place still just looked like
No.
You know.
Don't you think that was typical though of the kind of trip you were on?
Yeah, yeah.
See, we were on a different kind of trip.
Oh,
We
she
were on
done
an
talking
ultra
about
trip.
Yeah, but now we were at base camp, you know, and I'm just saying
not
that the Chinese people never ever cleaned up after themselves. That was just one of several things that bugged me about them. But anyway, the whole point I'm trying to say is that then this Sherpa, who is, you know, of the Nepalese nationality and from Nepal and not Chinese, came down and he was sick even, and he got in there and he cleaned up that kitchen. He had it sparkling in a matter of an hour. After three of us had worked all day long.
And then tell what he cooked.
Well, we couldn't find anything. You know, there were some old potatoes, and we had potatoes twice. Like one night dinner was, and I thought this is the best meal we had until the Sherpa got there. It's potatoes, and we peeled them, and it took forever to peel them. And then we boiled them, and it took like 2 hours for them to boil and be done.
Is that because of the altitude?
It boils at a sooner temperature, but it just doesn't get as hot. So we boiled these potatoes forever and ever and ever and ever, and then we found this butter, this old sort of yucked up butter. Put them on there. No, it wasn't yak butter, but
okay. It was yuck.
It was yuck, and so we had boiled potatoes with this sort of rancid tasting butter, and it was just that was just great. But then this Sherpa came down, and there were some spices, and there was, you know, of course, everything in the box was a different. You couldn't tell what it was, and the food was just real grim. And there were a couple of dead, tired cabbages over there, and a few of these potatoes. Well, he got in there and made this rice, and then he chopped up the cabbage and a potato, and he found some garlic that I didn't even know was there, and an onion, and then put all these spices on it and cooked that. And then they had pressure cookers, and I didn't know how to do the pressure cooker, and that's the answer, of course.
Yeah,
That
makes it cook faster.
But if you don't know how to blow you up, can you?
Yeah, so I didn't even know where to begin with the pressure cooker. So he went in there and cooked up the best meal I've ever eaten. And then he had these lentils, you know, those little bean-like things, and made a lentil sauce that you served over all these. I mean, it was just divine. We just felt like we'd been served the king's meal, you know, just from this one little old Sherpa. And they were just such capable people and such. I'll tell you something about the altitude that tells you how it affected you. The first day we got there, Ann Smith came down and she said, I know you haven't had anything to eat for 3 weeks because we ate the same stuff, and I've been saving some potatoes for you, and I'm going to make some French fries. And that sounded divine. I said, oh, you know, that's just, I would love some French fries. So, she said, well, I'm going to go on and get started, and I'll call you when they're ready. And I had a headache, and we felt bad and everything. And a few minutes later, here she comes back over to the tent, and I was lying there thinking, oh, these French fries are going to be so wonderful. And you know, I'm pretty energetic, and I get in there and I'll help clean up the kitchen, or I don't mind doing work or something. She came in, she said, listen, I'm getting this stuff ready, but the peeling potatoes is really going pretty slowly. Would you come help me peel potatoes? And she left, you know, and I said, yeah, I'll be right there. And I turned to Bobby and said, peel potatoes? The way I feel, how could I possibly peel potatoes? I don't have the energy to peel potatoes. And you know, all that takes is just doing that. I mean, I said, she might as well ask me to climb to the top of Mount Everest to peel potatoes. I mean, I practically fell to pieces over peeling potatoes. And he said, well, you've got to. And I said, I know, but I can't go peel potatoes. I mean, God, you know. So finally, I dragged myself out of there. And this is just how the altitude makes you feel. You just can't, each step, each move is just,
when you come down the mountain and leave, do you have the reverse effect?
You have the reverse effect. You are floating. You're very euphoric. You feel, I don't know why. It's just like taking a hit of something. I mean, it's just because it's pure oxygen. It's just pure, and it just, the one day that we traveled from that base camp down to Nepal, that one, now I was not with Bobby, but I was, you know, with some other people. I mean, by the time we got from Nepal, I mean, we were just literally getting out of the Jeep and just, you know, oh boy, we had a flat tire, and everybody, let's change this flat tire. And, you know, 3 days before, I didn't want to peel potatoes. And we were clicking up our heels and just, you know, we were just feeling great. But when I left Bobby, it was pretty grim, because, you know, we've been in that wind, and we've been in that tent, and just thinking, Bobby said, you know, I've got another 6 weeks of this. So it was pretty sad the day that I left. But I felt real guilty because I couldn't wait to get out of there. You know, I kept thinking 2 more days and I'm going home, and I felt sad for Bobby. But the day that I left, everybody knew that I had a Jeep, and to get transportation out of there, I mean, you're really a special deal, a special person, because this Jeep and my Jeep driver, my interpreter, well, immediately the first day I got there, one of the Swedes said, "You're the one you're leaving Sunday? How much room do you have in your Jeep?" And I said, "Well, you know," I told them who was going to be in, and they said, "Well, we want to send so and so home," and they just really gave me this special attention because they knew that I had the power to get them out of there. So one Swede, it was a PR, not really a climber. And he said he wanted to ride with me. So I said, fine. And then this other fella, who was an American doing some filming from the Swedish side, came over, and, you know, he just came over real friendly. And, hey, yeah, right, well, listen, can I have a ride in your Jeep, you know? I mean, it was just... So the day we left, it was the Jeep driver, who was Tibetan, and then the 22-year-old Chinese student, who by this time, you know, we just had that guy. And he's the one that got up there and almost died. I mean, he had quite a trip. And then the Swedish PR guy, and then this filmmaker from Boston, American, and me, you know, crammed in this Jeep, and here I was, all these tears, saying goodbye to Bobby, and, you know, literally frozen tears. It was sad. And Alex from the Democrat filming it and taking pictures, doing all that. And I said, Alex, I want to be one of those people that grab a camera and smash it, quit taking pictures of me doing this, you know. But so then we chugged on off and had to go through these frozen rivers, but in a matter of 6 hours, then we were out of that altitude and then starting to go in the valleys of into Nepal. And we crossed through these fabulous, you know, just crossed literally through the Himalaya mountains. And then on the other side of the Himalayas, I mean, it was green as it could be. It was just green, lush, springtime Arkansas. And we had not seen one leaf, one green blade of grass. I just cannot tell you the difference. And boy, when I got there, again, I was just feeling sad, missing Bobby and all that, but I thought, oh, I like being here. I can breathe, I can walk, I can see green. And then we had really the best Chinese food we had that night at the border town called Chung Mu.
You were just getting used to it.
But then, of course, then we get to the hotel, and then there's the typical screw up. And we got outside, and this hill, this town, the Chung Mu is built on the side of a hill, and it had a landslide, which is real common. So we got about 2 miles out of town, and here were all the cars stopped. So you had to get out and walk. But there were a bunch of little Nepalese children running around who were the porters, so they grab your bag, and for about 25 cents worth, you know, they carry your bag in. It got to be every day. You just didn't. Usually when you're going to do something or when you have an itinerary, you think, all right, today I'm going to do such and such and such and such, and I'm going to do this and we'll do this. Well, all that just went out the window. You never knew what was going to happen. You never knew if your Jeep driver was going to show up. You never knew who was going to be with you, or if you were going to get in the hotel, or if you weren't going to get in the hotel, or what. So that day, you know, when we got here, and the Tibetan guy said, blah, 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 you know, and then he said something, and you know, that took like 5 interchanges just for finally Fred, our interpreter's American name, Fred, turned around and said, the road is closed, we have to walk from here. But it was just so bizarre and full of surprises. I mean, every day, and dealing with the Tibetans and the Chinese. But the next day when we had to cross the border, you know, the Tibetan people, the Chinese people are real particular, and they don't want anybody coming in, and if you go out, you got to look through your bags. And when you go over there, you have to sign, I'm sure you did this, Chloe, you sign up you have to tell them how many cameras you have and how many tape recorders you have. They're real particular about those things in particular. And you put that on your list, your declaration form, and then when you leave, they take that form, and the guy said, all right, let me see your camera. And I said, well, it's the same camera, you know. He said, go get your camera. And you have to fill out what kind of camera it is when you come in. And then they look at it and compare it and make sure it's the same one. And then, when we, sounds like my kids, I'm sure. Then then the same deal with the tape recorder. And he said, where's the tape recorder? And so I had to go get the tape recorder. He said, this is the same tape recorder. And actually, I lied and said, yes, it was. It wasn't. Bobby and I had switched tape recorders, cassette players. And the reason is they don't want Westerners to give the cameras or the tape players or anything like that to the Chinese people, you know, as gifts or anything.
Why?
They just don't want
Spoils them. They want to keep them where they can control
They
them.
don't want them to know how much better off somebody else has it.
Yeah, yeah. But it was really funny because when we were leaving, Bobby said, "I want to take your tape, your cassette player, because it's a lot less." And I said, "Well, just put that in the bag, you know." And he said, "No, you just go on and take it home or something." And I almost didn't take it. I said, "Well, just ship it." And I thought, "Oh well, maybe I'll take it." So I don't know what would have happened, and forgetting that they were going to question me about that. And that guy made me go dig it out of my bag and find it, and you know. So look, I've been at Mount Everest, I'm not, and he wouldn't. So I don't know what he would have done to me. I'm sure at least would have delayed me that day. So then we get to so we went through immigration and everything, so here goes my interpreter. My interpreter goes the other way, and then the Swedish guy was crossing over to Kathmandu too. So I said goodbye to Fred and said goodbye to all them, and here the Swedish guy and I go. Well, it is about an 8-mile walk from the border of sort of a no man's land, from Tibet to China. I mean, from the Tibet border to the Nepali border. So that you have the porters with your bag, so you're just striking out.
No transportation? You just walk it?
You walk it, and they say it's because the road is out and they have landslides and everything, but the road wasn't out. We walked the whole thing.
8 miles?
But the thing that was funny was that it's all these switchbacks. It was just these long series of switchbacks. So this Swedish guy who ended up being a real jerk that I really didn't like. He said, "Well, we will go down the way the Nepali people do." Well, I had my wrong shoes on. And the Nepali kids they had, you know, the road went like that. Well, they had these shortcuts that just went right straight down the hairpin's turns. So we got on that first trail, and I started sliding because my shoes were so slippery. And immediately on each one arm, each leg and each arm, there was one of these little Sherpas. And they weren't but about 12 years old. And so each one of them sort of took an assigned limb of mine and floated me down the thing. They were so cute. But then the thing, that Swedish guy about ruined it for me, though, because then I said, I want to pay these guys more because they've helped me, and he wouldn't do it. He was a real creep. He was the guy. Then we got to the border. Now, I guess he was probably a little bit younger than I was. And we got to the border, and I was hating him by the time this thing was over because he was being so rude and he was just a jerk. So then my car wasn't there, and he was going to ride with me, and I'd already made arrangements for a car to pick me up at the border. So we sat for 3 hours where he proceeded to tell me his gruesome life story about how noble he was. His family was 700 years old, and how many castles he owned in Spain, and he gets tan as a nut in the summer. And I just want to say, you know, 20 years ago that might have impressed me. God, he was terrible. And then we got to this wonderful hotel, finally.
You should have said, well, part of it stuck.
Yeah, right.
Stay out of the sun.
The hotel, and then the Nepalese people are very, you know, very colonial from the British being there. They're just constantly, hello, hello, and they're bowing to you, and they're wonderful, and they're just very much different from the Chinese. They were just really catering to you. And this guy, I was sitting there in the sun thinking, oh, I can't believe this wonderful sunshine, glorious green grass. And he comes up and he sits down. And the people just, when they walk by, they're just bowing to you, and they have little trays and want to bring you a beer. And they're just, and he said, these people, they all know me. Look at this. He said, you know, I was only here 2 nights when he was going up to Kathmandu. He went in through Kathmandu. He said, I was only here 2 nights. They all know me. They all know me. I was like, you guys. The whole thing was.
What was Kathmandu like?
Well, Kathmandu was wonderful because it was so green. And you know, you just take for granted. And when I got home here and saw all this green, I mean, there was just no green whatsoever anywhere in that. But Kathmandu was, it was a lot like India. You know, I'd been to India before, and it was big, bustling city, lots of English, lots of, the people were dressed differently, and the people were real nice and real friendly, and I just didn't pay that much attention to Kathmandu, though, because I was ready to be home. And after that day, sliding down on my fanny from, you know, Tibet into Nepal, and then having to listen to that guy. And this guy, I shouldn't dwell so much on him, but he just ruined that whole time. He had this real explosive sort of temper, and he'd say, you know, guess I can't really use the language that he would use, but you know, there'd be cows, or there'd be dogs, or there'd be shepherds, or there'd be children, there'd be something in the road. I mean, you never went a straight stretch. There'd be yaks crossing the road or something, and he'd just, what is this? I mean, what is this? I mean, he just would go hysterical over something, and that car would kind of come up beside us, and he'd start, and I don't mean just the old basic damn and hell, it was all the biggies, and he would just explode. I mean, I really think the guy was crazy.
He's probably the one that killed the dog.
Probably so.
I bet he is.
Is he the one that they wanted to send home?
Yeah, he's the one that the
No
Swedes.
wonder.
He's the one the Swedes. Yes. So
Was
he
he
was
going
terrible. He was heading home. He was going to meet his girlfriend in Bangkok. She loves me. I'm glad somebody,
Well, how did
she
he
and
get
your
there?
mother be about the only one. Oh, it was
You
just
should
so
have told him
bad.
that. You should have told him that she and your
Well,
mother.
I mean, I really thought if ever there's one person that I can say you have been. I mean, it's so funny being on film because you're so inhibited what you're going to say. But he brought out the very worst in me as far as thoughts and language and everything else. And I really wanted to tell him in a very calm way what a jerk I thought he was. But then I thought I can't really be that mean to somebody's face. And then I thought, well, I probably wouldn't be quick enough to jump back before he slugged me. He was so bad.
He was uglier than the ugly Americans.
Oh, much.
What John Hall wants to know about yak milk, and yak butter.
Okay. The yak is all the Tibetans mostly they're tribesmen and herdsmen and nomads. And the yaks are their beast of burden and their food source, and it's like a family member. And a lot of times your status is determined by how many yaks you have or how fine a yak you have. So they have this yak butter it's weird. They have just these pots of this butter stuff, this churned, it was almost more like cream. And they put this yak butter everywhere all over the temple. They'd walk in and they'd each have their own little pot of it, a little cache kind of it. And they'd go around, they'd dip it, and they'd rub it on the Buddha, and then they'd rub it on their forehead, and then they'd dip it, and they'd rub it on the altar. So that when you go into these temples, I mean, you'd slide through these temples. It was just yak butter everywhere. And it smelled real rich, kind of sicky sweet, I mean, I didn't think it was that bad. It drove Bobby crazy. He really
But it didn't
like
smell rancid.
No, it didn't smell rancid. It just smelled, when something smells so heavy and thick and sweet. That's the best way I can describe
Why
it.
would it be so sweet? I mean, that's just the way
It just
comes
smelled
out.
that way. I don't know.
Did you ever drink any
And
milk?
then they have the yak butter tea that they make from the yak butter, which was, if you've ever made hot buttered rum and you put a pat of butter in there and it kind of makes that oil thing. Well, that's what that was like. And then they milk the yak for their milk, and I didn't taste any of the yak milk.
It was mean enough to do that.
I know. Well, the yaks were pretty gentle, really. And they had them all dolled up. They had them all, when we first got off the airplane in Lhasa and drove out, the yaks are all, I told you how the women are all tied up with things, and these grand men, they're called kampas, and you remember reading about them. They're the sort of the heroic herdsmen.
Chicken.
Yeah, go get that chicken. There it is. Forgot what I was saying.
The herdsman.
They were just real grand and gallant and big, tall men. They had these big red tassels wrapped. You all might see some of the pictures of these big tassels wrapped around their hair. But I was saying something else.
The decorated yaks.
Oh, the yaks. Yeah, the yaks they had things wrapped all around their horns, and they had yokes on, and then they had the yokes all decorated. I mean, I thought about you used to go to the livestock show parade, and the horses and the cows, and everybody be all dressed up. That's the way the yaks were. They were out there.
Colorful.
Oh,
If that's all you got to mess with, you decorate your yak.
I guess.
Kind of like customizing a
Yeah.
Chevy here.
But the yaks were great. And
States
just yaks were just everything. And you don't even see a yak around here. I mean,
They don't
you never seen a yak.
They don't slaughter them for me.
No.
There's
I think when one dies or something, then they will. Because like in the Lhasa Hotel, you could get a yak burger. But
Ooh, that sounds. Diane, we've got to take
Make
the
this trip,
trip.
yes.
Bobby said
We
he had
could have for
didn't he, really?
$6,500.
What did he say it tasted like?
it tasted like deer meat.
I was thinking Hawaii, but you'd like this so much more.
Tell us about Hong Kong.
Oh, Hong Kong was fun. We stayed in a really wonderful hotel that was right on the water, but see, we were there such a short time. We got in late one night. Our plane was late because we had terrific headwinds. In fact, we had to stop in Okinawa and refuel, which they said was pretty unusual. So we got there late that night, but then our times were screwed up, you know. We were real excited though to be there and everything. And then we just ran around a little bit the next morning, and then had to get back on the plane, see at like 1 o'clock or something like that. So we didn't get much.
Did you stop there on your way back
Yeah.
too, but not long then?
And again, I stayed in a real nice hotel, and it was wonderful because I was real tired, and we barely missed our connection, barely made our plane, or I barely made my plane because the other one was late. So you get out and you go through immigration, and then you go through customs, and they look through your bags and all that, and I walked out, and someone from the hotel, and I knew that there probably would be someone there to pick me up, but I wasn't real sure. And he walked up to me and said, "Are you Mrs. East?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Step right this way." And it was a bottle green, dark green, you know, that wonderful dark green Rolls Royce that he escorted me into. And I you know, after all this, I was like, this is more like
Right. They finally know who you are.
Yes, I'm glad someone has finally read.
Maybe it was the first day and a half you were there, they recognized you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. Because she'd been back before when she'd gone over there.
That's right. That's right.
They knew her in Hong Kong. They had the rolls out.
But in Hong Kong, then they have all that British influence where they're just tripping over you to serve you and oh, thank you. And then it was about, I guess it was about 11:30 when I got in. I got into my room, and I was staying at a different older hotel then, and they have what's called your room boy, which just sort of takes care of you while you're there. And I don't know, maybe you did this too, Chloe, but he comes in and I'd been there maybe just about 10 minutes. And he comes in and he opens the drawer for you, and the closet asks if there's anything you want to hang, and then of course he folds the bed down and does all that. And then about 10 minutes later, he knocks on the door and rolls in this big table with this wonderful jasmine tea and a huge tray of she's going to need a Kleenex or something. Tray of wonderful, beautiful fruit, you know, papaya and mango and bananas and 2 kinds of grapes. Wipe your hands. Don't get it on the...
What hotel was that?
That was the Peninsula. And that was just...
Did you check in? Did you have your backpack when you go to this luxury hotel, and did you have on your shorts, or what were you
I had on
wearing?
I didn't take any nice clothes, you know.
Yeah.
So I had, and of course again, at this point after Kathmandu, I had a bath. But when I got to that hotel in Kathmandu, and I'm sure they were used to it, that Yak and Yeti, you know, that's the one, Chloe, Walter and Rebecca.
Oh, did you contact them?
No, this is the hotel.
Oh, yeah.
That they stayed, that I stayed too. And
What, the Peninsula or the Region?
No, this is
in Kathmandu.
Kathmandu.
Oh, right, okay.
And I walked in, and you know, you have to sign in, you have to sign your passport number, and this is after I've been dealing with sliding down the mountain, and that big long walk, and then waiting for 3 hours, and then that guy, so I was signing in and everything, and he said, "I need to see your passport for your number." And it's funny, little things when you just sort of break down, and I just looked at him, and I said, I can't, don't make me find my passport now. And I swear I almost started crying right then and there when he asked me to get my passport number, you know. And he said, oh, you're tired. I know. You bring it down the next time you come. You go on up and take a bath, and you know. And this is the point when I had not washed my hair. Now we're on day 14. And imagine how I smell. I mean, I couldn't smell myself, but I'm sure everyone else could.
He knew he was close to being in trouble.
Well,
how the
he
Swedes
knew
say
I was.
goodbye? What did the Swedes say? Did they say come to my castle in Spain?
Oh no, but I mean, by the time we got to Kathmandu, that guy had gotten the idea that I didn't want to have anything to do with him. I mean, I was probably as rude. I mean, I definitely was ruder to him than I've ever been to. Just to make him leave me alone. And all he wanted to do was, it was this ridiculous Steve.
And he's the one that asked to ride in your Jeep.
Yeah, and of course, did he ever say, "I'll pay you"? And then and which is just sort of the way you do it. Well, actually, the Tibetan driver made him pay. But then when the other car picked me up at the border, there was never any mention of, let me pay for half or this. And but of course, he was Mr. Rich Guy, you know. And I'll tell you one funny thing. The next morning we were at the border. I was sitting at the breakfast table with my interpreter, little Fred, and the Tibetan Jeep driver, and then this other filmmaker, this American guy. And here comes this guy, and we're still in our mountain clothes. Nobody's had a bath yet. Well, here comes with this sort of a Banana Republic looking camp shirt, you know, tucked in, these pants that, these elastic waist here and elastic waist there, and new shoes, and an ascot. Now, here we are at the Chungmu border of Tibet. This ascot, and then he had his shirt so tucked in, and then and what he didn't know, though, was that he had tucked his shirt into his underwear. And he had on boxer underwear, I guess, but it showed about that much around his waist, so he looked like an absolute clown. He just strutted in there and says, new shirt, with this big old wet thigh band of underwear.
You weren't going to tell him, were you?
No, we just loved.
But that was right at the border.
American
That was
terminology that suits
That
it
was
real well. I think.
Yeah, that was on the Tibetan side. But you know,
Is anybody filming a documentary on the American expedition?
no, because it's really not interesting to a big filmmaker anymore because it's been done. You know,
what
so
is
many
David
times.
Brashears doing over there?
David Brashears
Brashears.
was working for the BBC. Oh, I heard someone do that. Working for the BBC on a. Did some of you all see that thing last right before we left about the balloons and the 3 women climbing Mount Everest?
Yeah, is that what we watched?
And not hang gliding, not balloons, but hang gliding. Anyway,
We saw it.
he has been working with the BBC, under contract with the BBC, to do a film on Mallory and so-and-so, the first climb. And he didn't get to the weather when he was finishing up. I don't know when. I guess it was this last fall when it was finishing up. He didn't get 2 shots that he wanted. So he had contacted us, because you can't just go over there and do it. You have to be with an expedition or something. He had contacted us, and we said sure. And then he contacted the Swedes, because they really were, their route allowed him a better position of this one particular 2 shots he wanted to get. So he was back over there literally to get probably about 10 seconds of film, or maybe 10 seconds each, maybe 20 seconds.
But he
of
was
film.
with the Swedes and not you. Oh.
Yeah, because the Swedes, well, I mean, I accused him later of jumping camp after he saw our camp and saw their camp. But he
Was this
said,
the one from Boston, though?
Yeah, yeah, David Brashears.
And he just went to get that little bit of footage?
And he was there when we got there, and then the mountain and the wind was driving him, and the altitude and everything was driving him so crazy. And he's like the only American man to have climbed Mount Everest twice. But he said he found out that I had a Jeep going down, and then that's when he started kind of hanging around me, you know, and saying,
You were real popular there.
with that Jeep driver. And he said,
Was Phone, who you said was your interpreter, is that the same interpreter Peter Jenkins and Across China had?
No.
Because his interpreter was Phone,
No.
F-O-N-G.
Probably real common
Yeah,
now.
But she lives over here though, Chloe.
Huh?
That was the one that lived over here, married an American and
yeah,
lived in Tennessee.
you missed this. He was a 22-year-old student who'd never got near a mountain, never checked in a hotel, never, you know,
Been on an airplane?
never been on an airplane, never.
Well, if Ann climbs it, will they show a lot of attention to that? Since she'll be the
Probably.
first American
She'll
woman?
probably, yeah, she'll get some attention. I mean, sure, she'll get a lot of attention within the mountain climbing circle. But possibly she would be Today Show or something like that, I think. But I don't know.
Well, Cynthia, did Rebecca and Walter go up the Nepal side of the Himalayas, and is that where the Japanese motel is up there, part way up? Because they didn't go up on the Tibetan side, did they?
Must be, yeah, I don't really
Because
know.
they talked a lot about Kathmandu.
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 Yeah, they went that way, which is the much more common way because it's only been like 6 years or something like that, just very few years that the Chinese have allowed people to come into their country and climb from this side. Now, when Mallory first climbed it, he climbed from that side. You know,
He did?
before the communist China took over, anybody could go over there and climb.
You mean Mallory's first climb was on the Tibetan side? I don't think so. Well, I don't know.
I think
When was
you might
China?
thinking of Hillary. I'm talking about Mallory.
I ain't Mallory that was killed.
They never really know what happened to him yet.
Was China not open to the world around 57 or 58?
That's right.
It was, just for the
All right, why did Peter Jenkins climb up the side you went up in 51? That book was written in 51. I've just finished it.
Well, Peter Jenkins' book was written
He
last
was a
year.
man from
Last
Tennessee,
year.
the farm boy from
No,
Tennessee.
you're a little mixed up because Peter Jenkins
He
was.
went the next
Across China, I
84.
read the copyright's 1951.
You want to bet?
That was about the expedition of 84.
That was about the 84 expedition. That's right. It's the 1984 expedition.
That's right.
He
I
just
just looked
went
at
up.
it at your house.
Did you look at the copyright?
It doesn't matter, forget
A lot about Lhasa and before the Chinese took over
What was the name of your book?
across China.
Maybe she's trying not to get this on.
I don't know.
Well, I want to know something. Do they have a lot of Lhasa options over there?
I didn't see one. I did not.
See, it's a
The
big
snakes killed
dog
them
is a
off.
fake.
Can I go?
The dog is a fake. I just knew it.
Is it supposed to be from there?
Yeah, they're in Tibet. That's what we named him after Kokonor. There's a Lake Kokonor in Tibet.
Right.
Yes.
And he's a
we did
Lhasa. You know, it all ties in.
You don't want this on film.
That's a breed
you
of
don't need
dog,
this
isn't
on
it?
film.
Lhasa
Yeah,
Apsos?
that's a dog. I did not see a single
Is
one.
that what
I
you all
love it.
have?
A lot of
That
people.
little thing is a Lhasa Apsos?
Cynthia, what did you do when you first got home? What were you
They
looking
probably
forward
ate
to?
all the Lhasa.
Well, of course, seeing the children. I mean, that was just number one. But
You did not see any children?
no, I said I was. She asked me what was I looking to. Well, it's funny because I really felt in a way that I'd gotten back to civilization at Kathmandu, and I was just looking forward to some decent food. Was the main thing, and a bath, of course, which I took for hours. It's funny when the man picked me up, dropped me off at the hotel, who picked me up at the border. He said, well, he said, I know you're kind of tired and everything, and he said, I'll just come back in about an hour and a half or so, and we'll talk about tomorrow. And I said, oh, hour and a half is not nearly long. I said, you better come back in about 4 hours. So, I mean, imagine not having a bath for so long.
Probably took 4
Did you
hours
come
just
back-
to get the dirt off.
Did you come
I
back
took
with a better appreciation for what you had?
Oh, of course. I mean, of course, you just, you know. And I had that trip once before when I was a lot younger, so I'd sort of had that feeling before. But I think are they
They're outside. They want you to come play with
Go
them.
see if they're outside.
Turn that off.
I can't come right now. I'm visiting. Baby in there
Lizzie,
just a
I'll
minute.
You want Phoebe to go? I offered the boy, I don't, because I whispered to the boys and said, if you all will babysit and keep the little girls outside.
But anyway, I definitely appreciated everything so much more. And coming home, mainly the children, and then sleeping in my own bed, and I don't know.
What about freedom?
Yeah. Oh, you're so aware of that.
I thought maybe we were going to have to tape some tent flapping so you could sleep.
You're right.
Well, she did have to, she did ask me to keep the kids last night.
Last night
She
was the
took a
first night I
sleeping pill
slept.
because she hadn't slept the 2 nights.
I've just been
back.
too keyed up, and I've been, plus my system's been screwed up, and like for the 2 nights that I was home, I just heard every little noise the children make, and woke up, and just, I couldn't really go to sleep.
Well,
So since I knew we were being filmed today, I said, Doc, you gotta keep those kids let me sleep tonight.
Was there anything at all that was peaceful about it? I mean, was there any time to really just sit back and reflect and look at the mountain and all that?
Yeah, you told me about one time when you and
None of
Bobby
that, huh?
went back of the city or somewhere, you climbed up on a mountain and you looked around.
Oh, well, that was, yeah, Shigar. I mean, that was, but I wouldn't say that's peaceful and relaxed. Once we left Lhasa, which was the place we flew into that had the nice hotel, it was just rough. And, you know, you were just thinking about, you weren't thinking about, well, am I going to have, you know, baked Alaska or crepes for dessert tonight like you usually do on a trip. You know, you were just thinking about, is there going to be anything there I can eat, number one. And if not, am I going to have deviled ham or Vienna sausage, you know, for dinner. And but I mean, I loved the adventure of it. You know, the Democrat interviewed me. It was so silly, and I couldn't believe she used that as the headline. How embarrassing.
Oh, it was a good one.
But I said it's a lot like having a baby. You know, it's the best thing that ever happened to you, but it's also the worst thing that ever happened to you because you're just, it's all so different and thrilling and
Everybody wants to do it again.
interesting. But gosh, I'm glad to be coming. And you know, when we got to base camp and that wind started blowing, that's when I really thought, I got to get out of here. And I felt real guilty about that. Of course, I never told Bobby that because, of course, I was getting out and he wasn't. But I didn't feel so guilty that I couldn't think, 2 more days.
Tell us about the Great Wall and the Forbidden City in Beijing, because we haven't seen that.
Well, I mean, it was neat, you know, and the Great Wall was really incredible, and to think how they built it and everything. Chloe, I'm sure you went up there. It's funny. It impressed me a whole lot when I was there, and I, you know, thought about everything, but everything else that I saw the whole time I was gone, just the people and everything else has left so much more of an impression on me that I can't really, it's sort of, yeah, it was neat. I mean, that's about the best I could say about it, just because the other stuff was so much more, made so much more of an impact. And then that Forbidden City, of course, was just unbelievable. All the work and all the color and all the minute detail and all the dynasties, and you could just
you know, you could just see those emperors and empresses running around in
Was
there.
that where the monks were arguing? Is that
No, that was into Tibet then.
Oh, okay.
I just have a few pictures of that, and I don't even.
You mentioned at the somewhere at the Forbidden City or somewhere you were visiting with a man that had a little girl or boy,
Mm-hmm.
and said something about your 2 children. And he,
Well, in China, which is before I went over there, I really thought it was sort of cruel. They have this big policy, Chloe knows, I'm sure, about one child. They only want you to have one child, and supposedly, I mean not supposedly, Ms. Chong and other people told us this, that when you get married, the government wants you to sign a little agreement right then and there that you will only have one child. And when you have one child, you're given an extra paycheck per year. Both the man and the woman are given an extra paycheck per year. You're given a top billing in kindergarten school, which is real hard to get into kindergarten. You're given better hospital benefits. In other words, when you have that one child, you're just flooded with all these little extras. And Richard said a minute ago, you know, just having a job is a good thing. But if you have a second child, all that's taken away. You lose that extra pay period, that extra paycheck a year. You lose your choice, your kindergarten slot. You lose everything. And it's just this tremendous effort to control the population.
Mommy,
Which
Cash say shalom.
he did.
Cash say.
Cash said it. I want you to go tell Cash that he's going to be in big trouble, okay? Go tell him right now.
Cash say.
Collier said it? That's even worse.
well, Pee-wee's going to tend
Go
to
tell
him.
Pee-wee.
Pee-wee's going to tend to him.
So this one child thing was really, you know, having 2 children here. I mean, it was hard to understand and think about and realize. But when I saw this man, I took his picture at the temple. He was one of the few Chinese people who made an effort to speak to me, and he nodded at me and he said, "You American?" And I said, "Yes." And he had just a little bit of English, and I said, "Your baby is beautiful. May I take your baby's picture?" "Yes." And we talked about the baby, and then I said, "I have 2 babies at home." And he went, you know, just this, he kind of acted like, "I can't believe you're telling me that," you know. And then I said, "In America, it's okay, it's good to have 2 babies." But it was, you know, it was different. And then another thing they were telling us about is, you know, Chloe mentioned the freedom. I mean, they have, you work someplace, but every place, of course, every place you work is owned by the government. So you have what's called your work unit, and your work unit decides if you can move. If you want to move apartments, you have to get their permission. They have to inspect the apartment. They have to say yes, you can move. No, you can't move. If you want to get married, you have to go through your work unit. I mean, everything, every step. If you want to travel, if you want to take a trip, you have to go through your work unit. I mean, everything that you do, other than just your basic go to work, come home, is controlled through this governmental work unit.
I do real well there.
You know,
Can
I've
you
lived there
imagine?
about 15 minutes before somebody had to
I mean, it's
kill
just
me.
so totally different from our way of life and from our thinking and our culture and you know. But then the Tibetans didn't seem to be. They were still living sort of their old life because they were still roaming through the country. And the Chinese, up until just very recently, had outlawed or, you know, made illegal their religion and everything, and their religion is just their whole life. And the Chinese finally realized that they weren't doing anything but strengthening their religion. So they finally have let them have their religion, and that's, you know, it's made them happier. But it was something.
I want to hear you and Chloe compare your impressions of China.
What was
Chinese.
some of your best food you had? Best Chinese food?
I didn't have any good Chinese food.
Did they eat greens every day? They ate greens. Like it was Chinese rape, R.I.P. And it's tender baby greens, but they eat the stems and all. Those
Yeah.
old stems that we pull off, they don't waste a thing.
Yeah.
But then I asked.
Well, that's like we did have some Peking duck. We went to this Peking duck
How'd you
restaurant,
like
and the last course, which I kept saying, "Oh, this is the delicacy, it's the best." It was the duck's feet.
Did you try it?
I took a bite just to be polite.
Tastes like duck's feet?
Yeah, it tastes exactly real webby.
Real webby.
Real webby. But see, we didn't get it. Even when we were in Beijing, the hotels that we were in, which is where we had to eat, even if we said a million times, we would like to go to a nice restaurant and we will pay more because we'd already paid for everything in advance. They just, that blew them away, you know. So, oh, no, you can't pay, you already paid, we eat here, we just, you know. So you just, I mean, we finally just got tired of battling with them.
Tell
I mean,
about the construction.
You know, doesn't it figure though, their lives are so structured, they can't think like that.
That's right.
I mean, that's exactly what I see there. They couldn't make that determination.
Well, that's right, and that's why our little interpreter, 22 years old, I mean, I'm sure he thought, if I ever get my life clear to this American woman, I am going to have it easy, you know.
He probably never take another job like that.
Because
He may not have.
He
I
probably
was
doesn't
nice
ever
to
want
him
to
and
come
everything.
home.
I was nice to him. I would never mean to him or anything, but
Makes me wanna go.
he was my only way that I could possibly
Come
try
on,
to
Tom.
communicate.
Did he ask questions about America of you?
Yeah,
She wonder how come there's so many little
yeah.
Tibetans.
That's right.
But Chloe, our food was just horrible.
Did you say they do construction all night long there? Is
Yeah.
that what you said? They just keep
Uh-huh,
working on
mhm. Well, it wasn't all night. I guess they quit about midnight.
Tell them about the bamboo scaffolding they have there.
Yeah, just, I mean, everything is just so primitive, and so everything is by hand, and everything is, you know, and like
Even in
Beijing.
Hong Kong?
No, Hong Kong is not considered a part of China.
Oh, honey, it's the most exciting modern
Cause see,
city.
it's owned by Great Britain, so it's not even. I mean, they're Chinese-looking people. Beijing, yeah. It was really.
Did you see
Everything
much
was
Tai Chi?
primitive. I don't even know what that is.
Oh, the exercise.
Tai Chi. I didn't understand you. Yeah, we saw that. Some of
Picture
that.
of somebody.
But you know, see, my trip when I say I've been to China, I really don't think of it that way. Even though Tibet now technically is a part of China, I think, you know, I have been to Tibet and Mount Everest, and not really China, because I was in China. And you know, the airplanes. Did you fly on that CAAC Airlines?
What do you think about it?
Oh, it was miserable. Didn't you think it was terrible?
Well, there are two airlines. The Taiwanese is called the China Air, and then yours is China's, the mother
We
China.
were on the CAAC.
Well, they were mostly Russian planes.
What was so bad about it?
Well, the seats were teeny tiny, and that's okay.
That's
you
because
know.
people over there are too nice.
Right,
Isn't
and
that
we're
right?
spoiled Americans and everything, but I mean, they were so small, and that's okay. But you get on the plane, and everyone sort of gets on the plane, and then the plane starts taking off, or starts taxiing while people are still standing up and sitting down, and then they're climbing all over each other and shouting, they're doing like this, and then, you know, you buckle your seatbelt, you never buckle your seatbelt, and you know, and then you get ready to land, and hey, what do you want to do over here, you know, just, I mean, it was when you're landing, you know, and you're just kind of, God, what is this? And then the stewardesses, especially from Chengdu to Lhasa, they came in and they had these little boxed drinks, and I promise you, they were just throwing them. They just came in and throw them. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Just never a smile, never. I mean, that was just my whole impression of my 4 days, really.
Well, think about the number of millions of people they have to serve, though. I mean,
Yeah, but
you can just
airlines.
lose the personal touch.
Well, no. I mean, they only had this one flight a day. Those particular people. That's just.
I'll come with you, darling.
Well, tell about the gifts they give you on the plane.
Oh.
The gifts, didn't they give you gifts?
She's really gonna get mad
Well,
now.
see, no, I'm not. Yeah, we were in Chengdu. Nobody goes to Chengdu, you know.
You were an American tourist.
Yeah.
And she was.
And see, the CITS, I'm sure had control of the tourist.
Well, not only that, the Lindblads went into China the first ones to get in there, and they did all this politicking before the other travel lines.
See, we weren't there. We weren't. Like in the airport, I hated being in the airport because that's where I got pushed more than any place the whole time I was there. I mean, they would just, you know, and you just
spit.
And all that spitting.
They spit, they hawk, they cough and spit and hawk. Well, you would too. The dust
No, I wouldn't
from
do
the
that.
desert. Tell me about.
Well, you wouldn't spit it on the floor.
No, I wouldn't do that, but you do. The dust all the way through China just chokes you. We coughed our way through China for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe they have a lot of respiratory problems there. I'm sure they do.
They do.
Well, yeah,
they
do. But
I'll bet they do.
They do. In fact, when I had some cold before I left that I couldn't get rid of, and my doctor, his wife had gone to China, gave me a special antibiotic. He said, this is one.
A lot more germs, a lot more.
He said,
you know.
Americans are very susceptible to a particular respiratory strain of infection. And so I was taking that every day just as preventative. And I did not get sick. But,
How is Bobby's attitude? Do you think he's still glad he's doing this, or how is?
oh, you know, I don't know. I mean,
of course, the last time you saw him,
yeah, see, I mean, I just have to have every faith that his spirits were lifted. Once I mean, I felt like as long as I was there, that still sort of had that connection with home. And I think after I left, I'm hoping that after I left, and then he was able to go on and get up there and start getting with the other climbers. And if only that wind stops blowing, I know he's.
Well, I can tell you right now, once he got up there with the rest of the guys, where he felt a lot better.
Yeah, because we finally, I mean, when this poor guy came down with the toothache, I mean, you know, I just couldn't have been, I'm so glad to see, I'm sorry you haven't done that, but gosh, this is great, you know. And it just, the base camp part of it was a disappointment as far as the way it all worked out because of the weather and because we were just absolutely imprisoned in those tents.
I wish they could use that telex and get word back to
Well, see, the Chinese won't let them.
They won't?
Because we went over there, they've got a telex machine like any, I mean, this regular telex goes anywhere in the world. So we thought, great, well, and Alex, the Democrat guy, had gotten permission from the paper to write news stories, do whole stories by telex, and that they would pay for it, which, you know, would be pretty expensive. They went over there, and in fact, I was with them when they were talking about it, and the Swedes said, we've been warned not to give you permission to do this. And that they had already sent all their equipment over there and everything, and they did not know until they got there whether the Chinese were actually going to let them put the equipment up. That's how down to the wire it was.
I want to ask you a serious question.
And that's because they want to control any kind of information that goes out of the country. So they said Americans don't let them use your telex. The only time they can use the telex is if they make the summit or if they're heading home. Or some
major. Serious question, and I'm real serious, okay? Well, I sound serious, but I'm serious, all right?
Is he serious?
No, I'm real serious, okay? I want to know if you think that maybe they didn't pull some of that crap just because they thought maybe you were having a pretty good time.
Pull some, what are you talking about?
Well, it just seems to me, everything you're telling me, all I keep hearing, everything that you wanted to do, there wasn't any harm in you doing it. That you would have enjoyed it. And they just, by God, didn't want you to enjoy it. Just seems
Just
to me.
their paranoia, honey.
I think probably Chloe's right. It's just their, you know, just the idea that we wanted to do something different than what they thought. They
think everybody's going to do something, quotation marks, bad, and they're watching for it. But bad means
anything different.
Out of the ordinary.
Anything
what they don't do.
Anything that they didn't put on the schedule, then they just didn't see. And see, half the time too, we were, we were the liaison officer and our interpreter, and they just didn't have a whole lot of. That's Alex Brandon, the Democrat reporter. They didn't have the authority to do it. But then they gave us this big runaround rigmarole about Bobby really wanted the interpreter that was with him last summer to go with us, and we thought she was going to be able to and everything. And then we got there, and she kind of finally broke down, sort of, and we read between the lines that they did not. I mean, our very strong suspicion was that the government agency did not like the idea that an American had specifically requested her and that she should not get too chummy with him. I mean, not because there's any kind of hanky-panky, but just because they did not want any one particular person getting any very close at all to an American. So she was not our interpreter, but she was the Trekker's interpreter. So it's not like they didn't want her to go on the trip.
They're just keeping her in place.
Just keeping her, exactly. That's exactly right.
Well, she said that about, Bobby said that earlier, that you've got to, they can't make any mistakes, or they'll never be allowed to do work again.
And they can't take any kind of present, and they're not supposed to take any kind of money or any kind of, and when we first got there, we were trying to give our guide and our interpreter some stuff, and just a little nothing, and they just freaked out about it, just, oh no, and then, sort of later on, they, under the table, take something, but.
Who did he give all those hats to?
Well, that was a good example. When we got to Lhasa, we met our driver who was going to take us on this drive and then take me onto the border, and we knew we tried to give him one of these Arkansas hats, or a Mount Everest hat, and he said, no, and we said, well, please, we want you to have, no. And then about 2 days later, we were just chugging down the road, and he turns to the interpreter and says something, and the interpreter turns something back to us, he says, he'll take his hat now.
2 days it took him to work on that.
He said he wanted that hat.
That's funny.
Well, maybe it was because it wasn't a gift then he asked for it.
Maybe so. But, it just the amount of people that got involved in just the slightest little thing. I mean, it was just.
You do get the runaround a lot, though, don't you? And you have to wait on everything. Don't you find that?
Yeah.
It was just. time means nothing. It's worse in Mexico, isn't it?
Oh, I think so.
Worse than
But it's not like because they're laid back. It's quite the opposite. They're all in a hyper frenzy.
They're scared to death.
They're just, it's just, and you know, I just.
Okay, Cynthia, tell us what really happened.
Yeah. Turn the camera off and I'll give you a real.
Do they have teenagers over there, or would these be adults that be out working?
Will they be out?
Oh, everybody was out working, especially, you know, in Tibet. So you couldn't, it was really
Did
kind
you
of hard
see
to
them
distinguish.
dancing, teenagers over there dancing or anything?
They don't have teenagers.
What, did you see them live? Did you see anybody live? We saw happy children, and every now and then you see a happy teenager.
Well,
but they're
teenagers aren't happy anyway.
I'm so happy. Look at them smile.
What a shot. Really?
I mean, you know, we just, when we see them, they were in there.
Right?
It's just their regular day, working and carrying on the family business and plowing the fields or,
Y'all enjoying that happiness?
you know, hauling the sticks and all and that kind of stuff. So we never really.
She said.
I mean, there were children, plenty of children like we there on a Sunday, which was, although they're not a religious country, Sunday was usually the day that they didn't work. And like that one day we were in Jigar, a lot of children followed along after us and took us up and showed us the ruins and the temple and the fort and all that kind of stuff.
Were you on your own when you went to there?
Where?
Where you were just talking about?
Jigar?
Oh, no, that's not what I'm watching.
I wasn't on my own until I said goodbye to my interpreter at the border, and then I had 3 days in Kathmandu
By yourself?
By myself, and then that had to, you know, spend the night, and then I flew all one day and spent the night in Hong Kong, and then flew all the next day. Actually, the next 2 days, but it only was 1 day by my.
Crossing the date line.
Yeah.
Are you back to normal yet?
Last night, finally, I got Dot. She spent the night with me the night I got in. It was real late, and I was just so on a buzz then I couldn't even begin to sleep or anything. And she spent the night with me that night thinking I'd sleep late, and I didn't. And then the next night, it was funny, it was sort of, things were sort of starting to be back to normal a little bit. It was my second night at home, but I just heard every little peep that the children made. And, you know, kids are so loud when they're sleeping. And Cash woke up at about 2:30, or I think it was about 2:45. And I woke up with him and went in and talked to him for a while, and I never went back to sleep. And I mean, it's not like, oh, I'm so tired, my eyes are burning, I need to go back to sleep. I was absolutely wide awake. So I got up at about 4 and, you know, went through my mail and did a couple of loads of laundry. And so finally last night.
Your adrenaline had to be up around Mach 10 or something, you know, to keep you going
really?
Like that.
Well, I'm sure it was. And then finally late yesterday afternoon, I called Dot. I said, you're not going to believe what I'm going to ask you to do. Would you keep my kids tonight? Because I knew the same thing is that I wouldn't, if I could just get one night's sleep, waking up with the kids once or twice would be okay. But I was just afraid that, because what I wanted to do, and I did, I took a sleeping pill and just wanted to sleep really soundly, which I couldn't, you know, wouldn't feel right about taking a sleeping pill with both children.
In fact, she slept so soundly, I called her this morning to see if the Easter Bunny had been over, and she didn't answer the phone.
Which is, that tells, because I was really.
She had forgotten she had turned the
I had turned the phone on. But it was funny because I got in bed, I mean, you know, I did a few things, and I got in bed and had a glass of water and a sleeping pill, and I thought, well, I'm going to take this sleeping pill, I'm going to look through some magazines, maybe do a little reading, then I'll drift off to sleep. So I took that sleeping pill and got down there in the covers and picked up that magazine, and I told Mary Carol, and I can remember thinking, I'm going to turn over, this really isn't I'm not very comfortable. And I woke up in that same position with the phone ringing. I mean, I did not even budge. And I know it wasn't a sleeping pill because a sleeping pill hadn't even hit my stomach, I don't think, before I'd gone to sleep.
Finally, your adrenaline.
Yeah.
David, do you have anything to ask her about?
Put me on the spot.
Yeah.
Put him on camera. Put him on camera.
No. He'll think of something.
You've had to go through Tokyo, the Narita airport, didn't you? Where'd you go from Seattle straight to Hong Kong?
Mm-hmm.
No, to Beijing.
Hong Kong.
Both times.
Hong Kong from Seattle?
I came in through San Francisco and I left through
Seattle.
You didn't stop in Hawaii at a time?
Had to stop in Okinawa on the way over, but not a planned stop. A stop for
fuel
because we had such a terrible headwind.
Hmm.
But tell Richard about first class, Cynthia.
Oh, how'd you get those coupons? We want to know.
She said it's wonderful.
There's just, I think it's about to be a thing of the past, but you know they have these frequent flyer deals where if you fly so much you get free tickets. Well, apparently you can get so many tickets up and then sell them. And there's a fella in Houston, and then there are a couple of places that are advertising the Wall Street Journal I know, that brokers, in other words, they will buy your coupons, so we travel, I think it was something like $50 more per ticket to travel first class. And I mean, you know, I fly a bunch to New York and Washington. I've never had people, the stewardesses, we're on United. I mean, they are absolutely, you walk in and they see your ticket and they see it says first class. I mean, this whole feeling comes out, oh, I'm so glad to have you come in. What bags would you like? What? And you sit down, they bring you a glass of champagne in the chilled, you know, tall glass. And I just thought, oh boy, I can. And then you have your champagne, then they come around, of course, with the warm towels and everything, and then they give you this little packet of stuff that has, it has moisturizer, it has Kleenex, it has little booties for your feet, it has a razor blade, it has a sewing kit, it has a lint remover, it has every little toilet article, a toothbrush, I mean, everything you could possibly think of.
All that you're supposed to do on the plane?
Just in case you happen to need it, you
right
know.
there in your
You gotta
seat.
find something.
You have to use
You
it.
gotta sew something, you gotta
then-
shave yourself, you gotta do
You
all that
gotta do
stuff before
something,
go.
you know. And then we had barely taken off, and they come by then with the cart, and of course it's linen napkins, linen this, linen that, and they come by with this big, you know, vodka in a cube of ice and caviar and, you know, as much as you want of that, and then they hand you a menu, and the menu looks like something from Jacques and Suzanne.
You
that
get to order?
You choose, you know, either a lobster thermidor with, you know, baby carrots and new potatoes, or a braised. On one flight, it was a rack of lamb and, you know, julienne. I mean, it was just as fancy a menu. And then they bring you the hors d'oeuvres.
This is like from Seattle to Hong Kong.
And then they brought that hors d'oeuvre, you know, they'd have like some smoked duck breast and some the pate of this, and then a little pastry filled with a mushroom cream with a, you know, crisscross of anchovies on top, and then 3 shrimp wrapped in pea pods. I mean, you know, just the fanciest, and then just any kind of.
Where were they doing all this cooking?
Well, see, they just had it set up. I don't know. I kept looking back trying to see the
They got
same
a little
thing.
kitchen, but they bring on a lot of that.
Yeah, it was all
stuff.
just us. And then wine, any kind of wine, any kind of champagne, and then you have all that, and then they bring this fabulous bread tray, and then you have you choose your entree, and they serve it to you. It's not like they put the plate down. It's this fabulous cart, so you can have a little bit of each if you want. And they serve it to you, and then they bring you another something, and then they come down with this wonderful cheese tray and 3 or 4 different kinds of cheese and exotic fruits and port. And then you think, oh boy, that was great, you know, it was wonderful. And then here they come with the pastry cart and the, you know, the cooler.
Well, no wonder you couldn't take loss and all after all that trip.
Didn't you get that on the way back to first class? Do you sit 2 across or how
No.
do you sit? How many across?
Probably about 10 seats aren't in first class.
It's not like riding a
No, I
subway,
mean
David. I think you gotta pay.
2.
No, it was 1, 2,
would've
1,
flown
2,
those
1,
days
2.
straight
I mean, it really depended on different size planes.
Yeah.
Because when on the plane that I came home in, it was funny. I was one of those planes where it's a double decker, you know, and I was on the bottom deck.
747.
Well, yeah, whatever it is, and
That's the only double decker.
I've never been on a double decker.
I hadn't either.
Lewis and I had worse.
They have a
And-
lounge upstairs.
It was, you know, huge seats, and in the front there were just 1 seat by himself, and I was mad I
Are
didn't
y'all
get
mad?
that. And then,
Are y'all dirty?
Yes, they're dirty. That
Come
way.
this way.
Get
please.
out, get
Come
out,
this way.
get
Back
out.
around that way.
You're a leopard.
Do what my mom did, make you undress outside in front of everybody.
but it's funny because that trip, it was such a contrast to travel like that first class, and as I say, it didn't cost us any more than what it normally.
Well, you were smart enough to get your tickets right. That's right.
Golly, and then to be, you know, places where there was no bathroom and no water and no anything and no
You went
light
from
and
one
no
extreme
heat,
to the other.
and then to have that absolute luxury, and just like being picked up at Hong Kong in a bottle green Rolls Royce, and then the Regent picks you up in a Bentley, and it was just, God, the things I've seen.
When you go first class like that, are you a lot more rested when you get there?
Oh yeah,
Sure.
because you're just not like this. Now I couldn't sleep, just because I just don't sleep well unless it's I think conditions are just not an easy sleeper, you know. But you could sleep. I mean, you could just, and they have these little footstools, and you put your feet so that your feet are way up like that. And then the chair, of course, goes way back, and then you're surrounded by pillows.
Do they have movies?
Yeah, they had 2 movies on going over and going back.
You don't pay for them first class.
You don't pay for them.
What do you pay for first? Nothing.
Nothing. I mean, it's
Do you
all
look
all
back
your
at
drinks
the-
You
are
can
free.
order anything you want.
Second class citizens and look at
They
that.
don't want you to go back there.
They put a curtain. They put a curtain.
Yeah, and because like I got up to go to the bathroom, it's fun. I said I'll just go back here, and she just kind of, in a real nice, gracious. I mean, they've all been to charm school. These first class stewardesses. She said, well, just wait just a minute and visit with me for 1 second. You don't want to go back there. Kind of like, you don't want to go back to the pen. I was like, honey, I'm usually back there.
Not back in the cattle pen, right?
Yeah, she really. And then at one point, somebody
You just didn't realize who you were, you know what?
She didn't know where you had gone before, did she?
that
But
somebody
there's
tried
a
to kind of.
business class between you and the common herd, right?
Yeah, right.
Some planes there were, and
That's
some
how I
there
was.
weren't.
I flew business class
business
when we went to
class.
London, and that was not first class, but they gave you the booties and gave you little
Yeah,
niceties,
you're better.
and you could have a free drink or two. It wasn't quite first class though. I mean, you didn't get
Well, I have never
almond duck
flown
or
first
anything
class
like that.
before, and I mean,
That's how I'm doing.
it was.
Where you go?
You could have told that lady. She said, "Honey, I ain't worried about walking to the back of the plane where I've been. I had to walk outside."
No kidding.
Really, you're lucky. You know, it's 70-mile-an-hour freezing winds out there trying. Oh Lord. Diane, I can tell you, I can see that you and I have got to make that trip. It'd be a real experience.
Fly back.
I'll stay in Hong Kong. You can go to
Yeah,
some,
wherever
you
I'll meet you back in Hong Kong.
No, I know you'd love it. It's sort of like a camping outing, you know what I'm saying? It would be a family thing we could share. We're not still on film,
You
are
can
we?
take your boat and put it over on the Yangtze, and you can spend a whole year floating.
That's a good idea. Floating the
Diane
Yangtze on
told
a
me to
houseboat
shut
for
up.
a year. Now,
Well-
Diane, you'd love that.
Let's see if Cynthia wants to say anything in closing, and then I'll turn this off, and we'll just visit.
Oh, no, they're like, I'm on the spot. I don't know anything in closing. I'm just glad to be
Well,
home.
well,
It'll be
tell us.
so-
I mean, give us some. Now that you're the world traveler you are, why give us some food for thought that we can live by after having seen all that over there.
Appreciate your bathrooms.
I think
That
that's a
wasn't
good place
exactly
to
the depth I was
stop.
looking for, but that's the yeah.
That's kind of like when Bobby was in that high profile thing and they asked him those questions and he said, what do you want your children to remember? And you want some philosophical
Yeah,
answer.
right.
Close the door and you go outside.
You know who he got that from? Mama.
Close the door, close the
Zip up
door.
the tape flash.
Well, Bobby's gonna see this when he gets back. Do you want to tell him anything? On the
He won't
tape?
sit through this. I can tell you, he won't get.
Easter Bunny.
Easter Bunny, you're supposed to speak to me. La la eat chili. La la. Easter, where Easter Bunny is coming tomorrow. And he'll the axe and pit axe. And he'll hide him. And we find him. We'll get him.
Well, great. Jessica, you tell me about the Easter Bunny. Did he come see you? What?
Hey, a lot of eggs.
You got eggs? How many did you get?
All of them.
You
All
did.
of them are spicy. They love to eat candy. They're spicy, small candy cake. Ah. What's your name?
I'm Charlotte.
Um,
Hey, Lewis.
Chloe told you about Charlie.
Did the Easter Bunny come see y'all today?
Yes.
What'd you get?
Huh?
Honey
Candy. What are they doing?
bag stuff.
What are y'all doing? Playing?
They're telling what the Easter Bunny brought them.
Oh.
Honey, never try this.
Collier gave him that shirt today.
Are you ready? Did the Easter Bunny come see y'all?
Oh, you better believe it.
Do you know they're gonna drive back to Helena tonight?
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
With the paintings really pretty.
That's really.
Is it chocolate?
It's wonderful.
I asked you for some candy a while ago, and you said you didn't know where any was. Where have you
found
been?
some.
Okay, I got some. And now you're taking me again, and I have on the same dress.
Oh, but it's so pretty.
And so I don't deserve another showing, but here I am. Hi.
Skins or what? What was that movie?
Yeah, like a,
We all not
yeah,
worried.
it's kind of like a buffalo.
I'd be a little worried floating around.
Did you see a picture?
I'm so glad to be home.
I can't believe it's less than a month since you even left.
Well, it's
The
been
time passed faster.
Yeah, it's been a...
Hey, y'all are on.
Hello, where is he?
He's plane's late. Plane's running late.
Tom, get Diane to take my camera and get a picture of all of us.
I will.
Because
No, I want everybody here.
Is this what I push right here?
Where'd you
Yeah,
park?
when it read, it'll lose.
Look this way.
Everybody look at Diane.
Hey.
Diane, take a picture with this one. For me, please.
Comes the chest right
Sit
there.
down.
Hey, Cassie, see the jet? Look.
Hi, Diane.
Hi. Remember, hold it on the white part. Get as close as you can, Diane. I think you can get one.
Hey, Lewis.
Okay, everybody look.
Look at Diane.
2, 3. Let me take a note.
Nah, because I want to save him for when he gets here.
Who?
Tell Charlotte he's coming home.
Dwayne Eddie. Coming off the road again. Tell me about it. Just ready to fire.
Daddy East is coming home.
Just ready to, it's automatic.
Yeah, automatic.
It's all right, we're all parked
You
Did
better.
you
We'll all
find a place?
swing together.
Oh, heavens,
I
no.
don't know what's going on.
It's because the Dallas.
You gotta go work for, I got to get up for real estate company and get it done. Go get it going, Channel 7.
It's happy.
I'm gonna tell him for it. Y'all just go out of your place.
Where's Elizabeth?
She's over there.
Okay.
No, don't pay in the crowd.
Charlotte, get Susan and Julie.
Yeah, What did you say?
Not too close.
We'll get it over here.
Hey, Marianne, how you doing? Good to see you.
Leave ourselves together.
Favorite teacher please send us your location, Excuse me, that's Kim.
No, y'all stood in there.
Everybody, come on.
Larry, I can't get, you're the only one I can't, well.
Come on, Larry. You get over here and get your pretty face. Ready.
One.
Look at Diane. Get King and Mountain in here.
That's right, he is.
One,
No way to see it before now, is it? I mean,
No.
Before now.
Lot, are you ready?
Uh-huh.
Lots of bells going off down there. Did you grow a beard?
No, you can't.
Probably always grew up on the mountain.
No, I think he shaves them off for a chance to get up.
No.
What, say again?
Daddy will be here.
He's coming down that hall. Through that door. Through that door right there. There he is. You don't look bad. You don't look too bad. You don't look too bad. Look at that. I've got to get a picture. Sweet. You look too bad.
Who's holding this
Wheelchair ready. You want this wheelchair?
We're kind of in the way.
Surprise.
Bring me a surprise.
We got a wheelchair.
Oh, thank you.
Boy.
You're on all the gangs here.
Go with you.
Can I hug you? Yeah, I don't know anybody's hanging back there. Huh? That would might lie. I really screwed up when I was loading it. Probably now. You did get. Oh, thank you.
Cash. Let me hold.
Missed my personal position.
Say something intelligent.
You look great, you turkey.
You do look good.
Boy, welcome home, my brother. Gosh. You'll be real proud of your flagpole, Uncle Bob.
Look at Elizabeth.
She thinks you're crazy.
My daddy's home.
Daddy.
Put on a show.
I always know he just jumped off the plane and ran off. I knew he'd do that.
You're going to be able to hold these kids. Give me one of them.
Cash.
Welcome home. That's right.
We're gonna find out. We think in Fiji.
She's right there.
Oh, thank you.
We'll get a deep breath. Hey, don't run. Yeah, man, we got to sit down.
Hey, wait a minute, don't go. I'm gonna get a close up.
I ain't gonna carry no bag. You know, carry it back. Yeah, you be good at that.
Elizabeth, smile. I'm really at the airport.
At the airport.
Where are you?
You believe that?
Aren't you gonna arrest her?
Huh?
Aren't you gonna arrest her?
It is the day I've been looking forward to 3.5 years. This is the day the Lord has made. I've been saying that all along. Yeah.
Liz, you want to say anything?
Come on, Elizabeth. Carry this bag. Carry this purple. Come on. You want to get on and ride? Get on there and ride? Get on there and ride. Hold on. Let's go.
Golly, I'm impressed.
Let's go. Hold them on.
Hello. Good morning. Hey, darling.
Hi, Lizzie.
Say hi.
are you? Glad to have your daddy home?
Yeah.
What's he doing?
He's sick now. He's sick.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.